He awakens in a narrow stone alley, his mind foggy as he tries to orient himself. The realization hits him like a physical blow. He remembers who he is and how he arrived in this strange place. Looking down at his small, youthful hands, he clutches a miniature knight and a glass vial, gifts from a higher power. This useful box ability seems straightforward at first, but the potential for what he could create or summon feels limitless. He steps toward the mouth of the alley, his eyes widening as he takes in the sight of a sprawling, rustic town. The architecture is unlike anything from his old world, with timber-framed houses and cobblestone streets stretching out under a vast sky. To ensure this isn't some elaborate hallucination, he gives his cheek a sharp pinch. The sting is real, confirming the impossible truth. He has truly been reincarnated into this new life. He cautiously peers around a brick corner, watching the flow of the townspeople. The street is alive with activity, but something about the passers-by catches his attention. He notices individuals with animal ears and horns mingling naturally in the market, a clear sign that this world operates by different rules. It brings back the memory of the divine encounter that started it all, an event that was as sudden as it was overwhelming. In that ethereal space, a magnificent winged goddess had prostrated herself before him, her voice trembling as she begged for his forgiveness. He could only stand there in his old-school uniform, completely bewildered by her display of humility. She continued to stammer out apologies, her composure crumbling as she admitted her own incompetence had led to this situation. He tried to make sense of her frantic explanations, while the elderly figure beside her watched the scene unfold with a calm, knowing presence. The memories of his final moments in his previous world finally resurfaced, the screech of tires and the sudden impact of an accident. As he stood in that void, questioning if he had reached the afterlife, the goddess's distress only grew, confirming that his journey was far from over. He sits in a serene, tea-filled room as the elegant woman before him introduces herself as Samudila, the chief of the heavenly realm. She speaks with a calm authority, inviting him to make himself comfortable while they discuss his current situation. She begins to explain the reason for his presence, revealing that a certain deity had neglected his duties and meddled with his destiny. This divine incompetence led to his untimely death, a mistake she is now tasked with addressing. This revelation triggers a memory of his final moments, recalling the terrifying snap of a suspension bridge and realizing that his life had been plagued by such suspicious accidents. He begins to connect the dots, seeing the divine hand behind his past misfortunes. As he recounts other near misses, like falling bookshelves and family turmoil, she confirms that these were the results of divine interference, meaning he can never return to his original world. The circumstances of his death were so irregular that his soul can no longer be sent back to its origin. Seeing his predicament, she offers him a chance at reincarnation in a fantasy world, a proposal he accepts with unbridled joy, given his love for such stories. He is eager to experience a life like those he only knew through games and anime. With a sharp snap of her fingers, she summons a glowing magical display that hovers between them, manifesting his latent potential into a tangible form. The display lists his inherent skills, such as cooking and a high memory capacity, which she explains are remnants of his previous life's experiences transformed into special abilities. He is surprised to see that his mundane talents have become powerful assets in this new context. She further clarifies that while such gifts are usually rare and require intense training or divine favor, his unique situation allows him to start his new life with these advantages already in place. It is a form of compensation for the hardships he endured. Encouraged by her support, he asks if his memories can remain intact, to which she agrees, promising even more gifts from the other gods as a token of their collective apology. She assures him that he will have the full backing of the heavens for his new journey. She then presents a vast list of potential skills for him to choose from, leading him to select the appraising eye as his first official tool for the journey ahead. With this ability, he will be able to perceive the hidden truths of the world he is about to enter. He listens intently as the goddess explains the intricacies of the useful box, a skill that allows for the storage of items across various categories. While the capacity for items within a category is vast, the number of categories themselves is limited by his own mental energy. He suggests a modification. Perhaps the skill could evolve, unlocking new functions as he grows stronger. She finds the proposal intriguing and grants the request, noting that he can decide on those new functions later. Their conversation then shifts to his third essential ability, daily life magic, which will provide the basic conveniences needed to survive in an unfamiliar world. He feels a sense of relief, realizing he is being equipped with everything necessary for this fresh start. The goddess pauses, her expression turning contemplative as she considers the delicate balance of the world he is about to enter. She decides to set his initial skill levels to 1, allowing him the room to grow naturally, though she warns that she must be careful not to grant him too much power lest it disrupt the global equilibrium. With the preparations complete, she offers a final, elegant gesture of farewell. Before she departs, he asks with a hint of sadness if they will ever cross paths again. She turns back with a gentle smile, explaining that while their direct interaction is ending, his continued devotion and the growth of his faith might one day bridge the gap between their realms again. She promises to look forward to that day, her hand reaching out as if to touch the veil between worlds. With a final blessing for a fulfilling second life, the divine realm fades, replaced by the vibrant colors and solid stone of a bustling town. He finds himself standing in a new body, the air smelling of wood smoke and earth, as the reality of his reincarnation truly begins to set in. Now inhabiting the small, youthful frame of a child, he immediately puts his new abilities to the test by invoking the appraisal skill. He is momentarily confused, wondering why he has manifested as a young boy rather than an infant, but he pushes the thought aside to focus on the glowing interface appearing before his eyes. The translucent screen reveals a surprising set of statistics, showing a level of physical power and agility far beyond what a normal child should possess. His eyes scan the list of acquired skills, noting everything from basic cooking and dagger techniques to more specialized resistances against poison and mental strain. His breath catches as he scrolls further down, discovering a section labeled Special Skills that contains abilities far more potent than he anticipated. The sheer scale of the gifts he has received leaves him momentarily stunned, realizing the gods were even more generous than they let on. He examines the details of EXP amplification, which promises to multiply his growth tenfold, and the God's Veil, a divine shroud that prevents anyone else from peering into his status. These are not mere tools for survival. They are fragments of a god's own essence, designed to keep him safe and hidden from prying eyes. Finally, he reviews his titles, which range from the literal reincarnated to the more ominous abandoned child and nameless. Despite the weight of these labels, he feels the warmth of Samadila's protection and decides that as long as these powers serve him well, there is no harm in carrying such heavy names into his new life. He gazed at the shimmering interface before him, contemplating the divine protection bestowed by Samadila. The blessing not only bolstered his internal energy, but promised a path toward divinity itself, a concept that felt both daunting and intriguing. Shifting his focus, he scanned the array of titles attached to his soul. From being a stranger in this world to being labeled as abandoned and nameless, each epithet carried a weight of its own, marking him as a host for a god's power and a recipient of celestial favor. With a satisfied stretch, the young boy marveled at how easily his mind retained the complex information, crediting his high memory capacity. Eager to test his new reality, he turned his attention toward the fundamental arts, specifically the utility of daily life magic. A sudden realization struck him as the knowledge integrated instantly. With a simple thought, a rush of air swirled around him. The skills were his to command. The sheer variety of elemental paths available left him in awe. Fire, wind, water, and even the more esoteric realms of holy and void magic were laid out before him, a vast spectrum of power waiting to be mastered. Concentrating intensely, he beckoned for a spark. A small puff of smoke signaled success, and he tightened his grip, resolve hardened. His curiosity led him to the useful box. At his touch, a sealed envelope materialized, bearing a message from the deity who had guided him thus far. Unfolding the parchment, he began to read the startling truth behind his current circumstances. The letter revealed that a malevolent entity had sabotaged his reincarnation, causing him to bypass infancy and stripping away his memories, which would now take years to fully return. The explanation continued, detailing how this divine interference had cursed him with such abysmal luck that he was cast out by those who should have cared for him. He couldn't help but notice the apologetic, almost sheepish tone of the writing as it addressed the problem of his abandonment. The final revelation was the most bitter. Because his latent abilities were hidden by the memory block, his parents had deemed him a failure and used his perceived weakness as a pretext for his exile. Despite the deity's sincere apologies, the young boy could only stare at the letter with a look of flat disbelief at the absurdity of his fate. He ponders the possibility of uncovering more clues, hoping to piece together the fragmented memories of the decade he lost. While he acknowledges the deity's lack of malice, a swirl of conflicting emotions remains as he gazes toward the distant, imposing estate that was once his home. Within those walls, his earliest days were marked by frailty, a sickly infant coughing in a cradle while his mother watched from a distance, her presence a constant but detached fixture in the sunlit room. The atmosphere shifts to a somber, rain-slicked cemetery where a lone figure stands before a headstone, the rhythmic patter of droplets the only sound accompanying the silent offering of flowers. This melancholy gives way to the harsh reality of his childhood, where he was treated as a pariah. His father's cold gaze pierced through the iron bars of his confinement, labeling him a disgrace and a failure before the finality of a turning key sealed his isolation. Cast out and standing before the towering gates of the estate, he recalls the stinging words that he possessed neither the gift of magic nor any special aptitude, leaving him to face the vast, empty world with nothing but uncertainty. The weight of this catastrophe forces him to clutch his head in frustration, his mind drifting back to the moment his strength failed him on the road to the capital, leading to a sudden, jarring collapse amidst the tall grass. As he lay unconscious, a mysterious figure in a dark cloak intervened, providing him with coin and lifting his small frame to the safety of a waiting carriage. He now sits alone, wondering if that silver-haired stranger was his savior, especially after discovering a cryptic note tucked away that instructs him to seek out a specific receptionist at the Adventurers Guild. Looking down at his worn feet, he finds a strange sense of familiarity in the situation, drawing parallels to the heroic tales of his previous life and realizing that the Adventurers Guild might be his only path forward. Despite the lingering fear of this unknown world, a spark of genuine excitement flickers within him as he approaches the guild's sturdy wooden doors, ready to begin his new life. The journey leads to the heart of the capital, where the headquarters of the Recomedy's Kingdom's Adventurers Guild stands as a sturdy stone edifice. Outside, bustling stalls display various wares, from sharp blades to sturdy shields, catering to those who live by the sword. Stepping inside, the young traveler is immediately struck by the sheer number of formidable individuals gathered within the hall. He scans the room, noting the empty reception desk, and realizing he must take the initiative. Recalling the instructions he received, he begins searching for a specific individual, someone marked by a scar, hoping to find the guidance he seeks. His gaze soon lands upon a face that commands immediate attention, etched with the harsh lines of a life spent in conflict. A prominent scar cuts vertically through the man's left eye, a silent testament to past battles and a warning to those who might cross him. The sheer intensity of the man's presence sends a jolt of apprehension through the boy, leaving him momentarily frozen. There, sitting with arms crossed and a gaze that seems to pierce right through him, is the very person he was looking for, though the reality of the encounter is far more intimidating than he had imagined. Larucci arrives at the grand headquarters of the Adventurers Guild in the capital, a bustling hub of activity. She spots a man who looks like the one mentioned in her letter standing at a reception desk, and, despite the intimidating atmosphere, decides to take a chance and trot over to him. Approaching the counter, she politely asks if this is indeed the reception desk. The man, who had been looking away, jerks his head toward her with a sudden, sharp movement. He confirms her suspicion, causing her to let out a long sigh of relief. She beams with a bright smile, expressing her gratitude that she hadn't made a mistake, as she would have been completely lost otherwise. As they speak, a wave of uneasy whispers ripples through the surrounding crowd. The onlookers are visibly unsettled, murmuring about the young girl's audacity to approach such a formidable figure. Sensing the tension, the man leans over the counter and bluntly asks if she isn't afraid of him. She pauses for a moment, her large eyes fixed on his stern face. She honestly admits that while he seemed a bit scary at first, she isn't truly frightened. Her straightforward answer leaves him momentarily speechless, his expression softening into one of mild surprise. He then inquires if she has any further business now that her initial task is complete. This catches her off guard. She realizes with a start that she hadn't thought about what to do after delivering the letter. A sudden spark of inspiration lights up her face as she remembers the nature of this world. Since she possesses the rare gift of magic, she decides that registering as an adventurer is the logical next step. With newfound enthusiasm, she declares her intention to join the guild. The man informs her that there is a fee for the registration test, looking skeptical as he asks if she actually possesses any currency. She quickly searches her belongings and is stunned to find a silver coin tucked away, wondering if the mysterious person who saved her had left it there. Seeing the coin, the man agrees to make an exception and process her application, though he remains visibly surprised by the turn of events. She watches as the guild master concludes their initial conversation, his expression relaxed as he prepares for the next step of her registration. He gestures for her to follow, handing over a registration form as they walk toward the testing area located deeper within the guild hall. As they move, he introduces himself as Goldo and asks for her name in return. Caught off guard, she realizes she hasn't chosen one yet, and quickly settles on Larucci, a name she fondly remembers using for characters in her previous life, though a strange sense of her own status and level flickers briefly in her mind. Once they reach the training hall, she hands back the completed paperwork, though Goldo notes with a raised eyebrow that she has left the sections for preferred weapons and specific skills entirely blank. He sighs at her lack of detail but agrees to proceed with the evaluation, watching as she conjures a small, flickering flame in her palm to demonstrate her basic grasp of magic. Pointing toward a specialized suit of armor, he explains that it is a measuring dummy designed to convert the force of any physical or magical attack into a numerical value displayed on its chest plate. He then establishes the parameters of the trial, informing her that she has a 1-hour time limit to reach a passing score of 300 points. Eager to begin, she focuses her energy and casts a simple ignition spell, watching with wide eyes as the number 101 flickers onto the dummy's display. Realizing she needs much more power, she concentrates intensely, gathering a massive sphere of fire before launching a powerful blast that rocks the training dummy with a heavy thud. Despite the significantly increased effort, the display only ticks up to 110 before flashing a bright fail message, leaving her in a state of utter disbelief and despair. She refuses to yield, her gaze fixed with a burning intensity as she reminds herself that the clock hasn't run out yet. Pushing her small frame to the absolute limit, she continues her assault, her breath hitching in her throat as the numbers on the dummy's display climb with agonizing slowness. The sheer exhaustion finally overcomes her, leaving her slumped on the floor in a deflated heap while the guild master calls out in alarm. However, a flicker of curiosity remains as she notices the score has increased and uses her appraisal skill to investigate. A wave of hope surges through her as she interprets the magical data, realizing that her fire magic has reached a new level and she has unlocked the magic control skill, providing the exact edge she needs to increase her accuracy and power. Gathering the last of her strength, she begins to conjure a new flame, carefully utilizing her newfound control to compress the energy and sharpen its destructive potential. As the sphere of fire intensifies in her palm, the guild master tenses and braces himself, his eyes widening at the sudden, heavy pressure radiating from the young girl. With a final, piercing cry, she releases the concentrated blast, the impact echoing through the hall with a thunderous thud as the target is consumed by the inferno. The display rings out a cheerful melody as it settles on a score of 324, confirming her success. But the triumph is fleeting as her strength fails and the world begins to fade to black. She eventually wakes, her eyes opening slowly to the sight of an unfamiliar ceiling and a comfortable bed, while a silent, light-haired man watches her from nearby. She wakes up in a soft bed, her first instinct being to apologize for the trouble she caused during the examination. Guldo, sitting patiently by her side, reassures her that she passed, though he explains that her collapse was the result of a dangerous combination of magic overuse and severe malnutrition. In response to his concern, she sheepishly admits that she hasn't had a proper meal since arriving at the capital. He offers a gentle reprimand, noting that maintaining one's health is a fundamental part of an adventurer's duty, a sentiment that causes her expression to brighten with relief. He reaches out to pat her head, telling her that since she is still a child, she should focus on acting like one and getting something to eat. As if on cue, her stomach lets out a thunderous, echoing growl that leaves her blushing with embarrassment. The young girl quickly straightens her clothes and sits up, her gratitude for his kindness nearly overwhelming her. Seeing her recovery, he suggests they head to the guild's cafeteria to finally get her a meal. Before leaving, she catches a glimpse of herself in a mirror and freezes, touching her face in disbelief. This is the first time she has seen her own reflection, and the sight of her silver hair and unfamiliar features makes her realize that this is truly her new identity in this world. While she is lost in thought, he strikes a confident pose and jokingly asks if his own appearance is what has her so captivated. She barely registers the comment, her mind still reeling from the realization that even her face has changed completely. Moments later, a massive, steaming plate of food is set down before her, the rich aroma filling the air. The man behind the counter, a jovial fellow named Fritz, introduces himself as the cafeteria manager while expressing his surprise that the stern guild master would bring a child here. Larucci looks on with wide-eyed wonder, her hunger finally about to be sated. He enthusiastically shakes her hand, commending her for having the guts to work with someone as intense as Guldo. She introduces herself as Larucci, politely defending Guldo by saying he is actually a very nice person, while nearby, the guild master's face turns a shade of red, his irritation boiling over as he listens to the exchange. The boisterous cook laughs, encouraging her to get along with Guldo because, despite his gruff exterior, he is truly the kindest person in the capital. As the two men bicker playfully, she realizes she might have found a place where she truly belongs. She watches as the portly manager shoves the stern man away, shouting for him to leave the kitchen area immediately. While she continues to enjoy her meal, the manager laughs off the tension, advising the man not to take everything so literally and to relax his rigid demeanor. As she finishes her food with a satisfied expression, the man interrupts her moment of peace, mentioning he has something important to give her now that she is fed. He produces a simple necklace with a metal plate, explaining it serves as proof of guild membership and an identification card for travel. To finalize the registration, he reveals she must place a single drop of her blood upon the metal, a requirement that leaves her visibly startled. She trembles at the sight of the needle, her anxiety mounting as he prepares to prick her finger with clinical precision. A single crimson droplet falls, staining the surface of the cold metal plate. Once the blood touches the plate, her name appears clearly engraved on the surface. Curious about the mechanics of the artifact, she asks if the material is capable of changing its hue. He explains the hierarchy of the guild, where the plate's color reflects an adventurer's rank, shifting from copper for beginners to silver for veterans, and finally to gold for the elite as they ascend the grading scale. After the explanation, he suggests she rest at the infirmary for the night. In that moment, a realization dawns on her that the silver-haired man who saved her must have been a high-ranking adventurer himself. The following morning, she stands before a massive set of double doors, bracing herself to meet the guild master and fearing he might be even more intimidating than the man who registered her. She steps into the room, finding Guldo already waiting alongside two unfamiliar women. The office is spacious and well-appointed, with sunlight streaming through the large windows behind the desk. The two women introduce themselves. The one with long, flowing hair and a distinctive diamond mark on her forehead is the deputy master, Lalatina, though she insists on being called FIA. Beside her stands the guild master herself, Leafia, a stern-looking woman with glasses and similar elven features who observes the newcomer with a keen, analytical gaze while Guldo offers a casual greeting. After the introductions, she takes a seat on the plush sofa, feeling a bit overwhelmed as Guldo sits closely beside her. FIA graciously offers to brew some tea to settle everyone's nerves, while Lala watches the interaction from the sidelines with a mix of surprise and concern at the proximity between the two. The conversation turns toward her past, and she quietly admits that she was recently expelled from her home and now has no family to turn to. The weight of her loneliness hangs heavy in the air as the guild leaders listen intently, trying to understand the circumstances that brought such a young girl to their doorstep alone. FIA gently presses for more details, asking why such a thing happened to her, while Guldo remains silent, his expression unreadable as he processes the gravity of her situation. She explains the core of her struggle, a unique ability that nullifies any form of appraisal magic, which led her previous community to believe she was a talentless failure. This revelation shocks Guldo, who vividly remembers the powerful magic she displayed only the day before and finds it hard to reconcile with her claim of being considered a failure. To test this claim, Leafia steps forward and invokes a high-level appraisal spell, far more potent than the standard rituals used during registration. A complex magical circle erupts around the young girl, bathing the room in a brilliant, searching light that pulses with ancient power. Despite the intensity of the spell, the guild master adjusts her glasses and confirms with a serious tone that absolutely no information is being revealed. FIA is left in awe, realizing that even the most advanced magic cannot pierce the girl's natural defense. confirming her story is true. Satisfied with the explanation, FIA bids them a warm farewell, explaining that they simply needed to verify her background before proceeding. She then instructs Guldo to take their new recruit to a specific location downstairs, her hands clasped together in a friendly gesture. He leads her away from the office and down a flight of stone stairs toward a heavy wooden door. Looking at the unassuming entrance, she wonders aloud if they are heading into a mere warehouse, unsure of what lies ahead. She beams with excitement as the guild master explains her first official duty. He details how adventurers frequently return with various materials that require careful sorting. Realizing this is her very first quest, she eagerly accepts the challenge of organizing the warehouse, much to the man's relief. She follows him into the heart of the storage area, where towering stacks of crates and overflowing containers of flora dwarf them both. Surveying the sheer volume of work, he lets out a nervous laugh, admitting that the task is far more than one person could ever manage. Even with her help, he realizes the monumental effort required to bring order to the chaos. The guild stands as a pillar of support, an institution designed to bolster adventurers with various facilities. Here, individuals or groups can take on requests and claim rewards for their accomplishments, fostering a community of growth and service. Having received her very first request following the guild master's advice the previous night, she looks forward with a quiet, hopeful smile. The weight of the opportunity is clear in her bright eyes as she prepares to prove her worth. She soon finds herself in the thick of the work, assisting a guild member who is struggling under the weight of a massive crate filled with monster remains. He expresses his deep gratitude, admitting that without her help, they would have been completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the task. Despite their combined efforts, the progress is agonizingly slow, leaving them both panting with exhaustion. The man laments the difficulty of the labor, while she realizes that at this pace, the sun will set long before the job is done. A sudden thought strikes her as she wipes the sweat from her brow, her expression shifting from fatigue to a spark of inspiration. She wonders if her useful box ability might be the key to overcoming this mountain of work. Deciding to put the theory to the test, she reaches out toward a crate of slippery tentacles, focusing her intent. A sudden rush of air swirls around the container as the magical process begins to take hold. To her delight, the items vanish instantly, reappearing as neatly organized icons within a mental grid. It works exactly as she had hoped, turning a chaotic mess into a perfectly categorized inventory. She takes a moment to analyze the mechanics, discovering that the ability allows her to move items within a 5-meter radius and automatically arranges them for maximum efficiency. With this realization, a sense of mastery over her unique gift begins to take root. She further observes that the items maintain their organized state even when removed from the storage space, a discovery punctuated by the solid thunk of a crate being perfectly filled. This efficiency is far beyond anything manual labor could achieve. With a newfound rhythm, she begins to repeat the process, her hands moving in a blur as crates are filled and moved with effortless magical energy. What was once a daunting, day-long chore is now being dismantled in mere moments. She had barely finished when Guldo stepped into the room, his eyes widening in sheer disbelief as he surveyed the area. He stammered out a question, asking if any progress had been made, clearly unprepared for the sight before him. He could only cover his face in shock as the young girl turned with a cheerful smile, announcing that she was nearly finished. Every single thing had been tidied up with impossible precision, leaving the man overwhelmed by the efficiency. She explained calmly that she possessed a storage-type skill, leaving the man to demand where the massive pile of items had gone. His mind struggled to grasp the existence of yet another rare ability as he ruffled his hair in frustration. He informed her that there were still 3 more rooms awaiting the same treatment, a revelation that hit her like a physical blow. Her eyes bulged in a mix of exhaustion and disbelief at the sheer volume of work remaining. She stood there visibly drained as he laughed heartily, patting her head in gratitude and telling her she had truly saved him. While he headed off to inform the master of their progress, her small frame slumped from the effort of her magical exertions. Looking back at the remaining mess in the adjacent rooms, she couldn't help but wonder how they would have managed without her unique skills. The scale of the task ahead felt daunting, even with her specialized abilities. Moments later, she was sprinting through the stone corridors of the guild, her name being called out urgently from behind. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed as she hurried toward her next destination. Suddenly, a vibrant woman wearing an ornate witch's hat intercepted her, grabbing her hands with intense excitement. Identifying her as Miss FIA, the girl looked on in surprise as the newcomer eagerly asked if she could store a silver coin using her skill. She watched with sparkling eyes as the girl focused her energy, causing the silver coin to vanish into thin air without any physical contact. The effortless display left the elven woman in a state of pure wonder. The girl was suddenly pulled into a crushing embrace by the elf, who praised her for storing the object without even needing to touch it. Overwhelmed by the physical affection, she could only listen as the woman marveled at the incredible feat. She continues to squeeze the young girl with overwhelming enthusiasm, ignoring the pleas for restraint. Larucci gasps for air, her face turning pale as the embrace tightens, while Guldo and Lala attempt to pry the energetic elf away. Despite the struggle, she remains undeterred, her eyes sparkling with a manic curiosity as she demands to see the legendary storage skill in action. Lala can only watch with a weary sigh, acknowledging that once this particular elf is fixated on a rare talent, there is no stopping her. Seeing the chaos, Leafia steps in with a formal apology, adjusting her glasses as she advises Guldo to take the child and depart for the day. She explains that peace will only return once the inquisitive elf has had her fill of questions, which won't be anytime soon. As they step out into the fresh air of the capital, the tall man suggests a tour of the city to clear their heads. He explains that the elf's behavior, while extreme, is a common reaction whenever she encounters a skill or item of such rare quality. Her eyes widen and her face lights up with pure joy at the prospect of exploring the grand city. The exhaustion from the earlier encounter vanishes, replaced by a vibrant eagerness to see what lies beyond the guild's walls. They begin their stroll through the bustling market district, where the air is thick with the scent of fresh produce and the sounds of commerce. He stops at a stall, casually picking up a bag of fruit as they weave through the morning crowds. After a quick stop at a clothier, she emerges in a fresh set of traveling clothes, looking much more like a proper adventurer in her new vest and sturdy boots. Though she worries about the cost, he dismisses her concerns with a wave of his hand, insisting that a change of attire was long overdue. Their walk continues past charming stone houses where the locals offer warm greetings to the familiar face of the guild master. Even the noblewoman Amelia spots them from a distance, noting that the stern man seems to be enjoying his rare day off. Suddenly, a boisterous crowd of townspeople surrounds them, pressing gifts into their hands and loudly inviting them to join in a midday toast. The quiet tour quickly transforms into a lively parade of community affection. He can only offer a sheepish smile as the enthusiastic citizens crowd in, while the young girl finds herself caught in the middle of the friendly chaos, her cheeks squished by the press of the crowd. She looks up at him with wide, sparkling eyes, amazed by the warm reception he receives from the townspeople. He tries to downplay his popularity, admitting he rarely interacts with others outside the guild, even as several citizens affectionately crowd around him, squishing him in their excitement. As the crowd disperses, he looks down, his gaze lingering on the scar across his forehead. He reflects on how that mark changed his life, making him appear more intimidating and leading him to a solitary existence where he is used to being alone most of the time. Moments later, they reach their destination, and he announces their arrival. She begins to ask about the history of his scar, but he gently cuts her off, focusing her attention on the building before them as they come to a halt. The pair stands before a charming establishment marked by a sign depicting a small bear. He expresses a quiet hope that there is still a room available for her in this specific lodging. Upon entering, they are immediately greeted by a large, jovial man who seems to have been expecting them. The sound of a bell announces their arrival as they step into the warm, inviting interior of the inn. The man, Dats, explains that his brother Fritz had sent word ahead of time, ensuring a room would be ready for the young traveler. He gives the guild master a friendly pat on the shoulder, confirming that he knew they were coming. He introduces himself formally as the owner of the small bear lodging, revealing that he is indeed the younger brother of the guild's cafeteria manager, Fritz. Stepping forward, she politely requests a room for 1 month, including breakfast and lunch. The innkeeper is struck by her mature demeanor and clear communication, while she offers a bright, friendly smile in return. Suddenly, the weight of the financial commitment hits her, and she begins to panic about the cost of such a long stay. Her distress and sudden realization only prompt a hearty burst of laughter from the two men. Dats leans in, explaining that because the guild master is considered the savior of this city, he and any of his companions are always welcome to stay for free. She can only stare in disbelief, her mind racing at the revelation of her companion's true reputation and the kindness of the townspeople. She is warmly greeted by Amelia, the wife of the tavern owner, who confirms that any request from Guldo is a priority. Amelia introduces herself with a kind smile, making the young girl feel welcome in her new temporary home. As Guldo prepares to depart for the guild, he entrusts her care to Dats and Amelia, reminding the girl not to be late the following day. She waves goodbye gratefully, while Amelia hands over a room key and encourages her to settle in before heading to the cafeteria for lunch. Moments later, she finds herself in the quiet comfort of her new room, stretching her limbs as the morning sun streams through the window and birds chirp peacefully outside. The transition from the bustling streets to this private sanctuary brings a sense of relief. Seeking to freshen up, she steps into a secluded area and begins to manifest small, glowing orbs of magic that float gently in the air around her. She then conjures a steady stream of water to rinse herself, shivering slightly at the initial chill, but soon finding it refreshing. With a quick burst of energy, she uses a pulse of magic to dry herself instantly, her hair fluffing up from the sudden warmth. While scrubbing her skin, she muses about the luxury of a proper shower, but remains satisfied with her makeshift magical bath for now. Her thoughts eventually drift toward her own growth, wondering if her recent experiences have altered her internal status. Upon checking, she is surprised to see that her physical strength has increased and that she has acquired a new blessing, Magilt's divine protection. This powerful boon promises to enhance all her magic attributes while significantly reducing the cost of her spells. Turning her attention to a pile of dirty laundry, she stands before a wooden tub and contemplates the lack of modern conveniences like a washing machine. She offers a quick prayer of thanks to the god Magilt before considering which of her many elemental affinities, fire, wind, water, or others, might best serve this domestic task. Deciding on a plan, she focuses her intent on the water within the tub, preparing to channel her wind magic to create a localized vortex. By skillfully manipulating the air to swirl the water and adding a bit of soap, she successfully transforms the simple tub into a functional mini washing machine. She watches with satisfaction as the magical agitation cleans her clothes, proving that even the most mundane chores can be solved with a bit of arcane ingenuity. She wipes sweat from her brow, admiring the laundry drying in the breeze. The efficiency of her new magical methods fills her with a sense of triumph, leading her to conclude that magic truly is the ultimate tool for a better life. After finishing her chores, she sits down to a well-earned meal, savoring every bite of the fresh bread. The simple joy of a proper meal is interrupted when a voice calls out to her, causing her ears to twitch in curiosity. A young girl with dark, wavy hair leans in close, resting her chin on her hands with a friendly smile. She notes that they seem to be around the same age and insists on being called simply Anna, bypassing any formal titles. The young mage politely attempts to reciprocate the greeting, but her use of a formal honorific earns her a playful pout from her new acquaintance. Realizing the slip, she quickly corrects herself to meet Anna's request for casual friendship. Their brief meeting is cut short as the tavern owner's voice booms through the room, reminding the girl that she'll be late for school. With a cheerful wave and a promise to see each other later, Anna dashes off, leaving a trail of youthful energy behind her. Watching the lively departure with a smile, she turns back to finish her breakfast in the now quiet room. However, the peace is short-lived as three imposing figures loom over her, their shadows casting a sudden chill across the table. The largest of the trio, a bald man with a stern expression, leans down to address her directly. His voice is low and serious as he states that there is something important he needs to ask her. Instead of the expected threat, the men suddenly burst into tears, their tough exteriors crumbling into a display of raw emotion. The sound of their sobbing echoes through the tavern, punctuated only by the rhythmic chirping of a nearby cuckoo clock. They lament the idea of anyone abandoning such a kind-hearted child, their faces twisted with grief and indignation on her behalf. The tavern owner watches the scene, noting how quickly the girl has managed to win over even the most hardened of patrons. As the men nod in solemn agreement, the cook explains that their outburst stems from simple gratitude. For adventurers who are often judged and feared for their appearances, being treated with normal kindness by someone like her is a rare and moving experience. She is invited by the large, bald adventurer to accompany them to the guild, as they have a delivery to make. With a bright blush and a wide smile, she enthusiastically agrees to join them. As they walk, the man ponders a curious question, asking why everyone seems to avoid Mr. Goldo's reception desk. He scratches his head, admitting there is a specific reason behind the guild master's intimidating reputation. The truth lies in a tragic event from a decade ago, when a massive dragon descended upon the city. At that very moment, a newly discovered labyrinth had drawn away nearly every capable adventurer, leaving the capital defenseless. With the city on the brink of annihilation, only Goldo remained to stand against the beast. He fought with desperate ferocity, pouring every ounce of his strength into a battle to shield the people from certain destruction. Though he emerged victorious, the cost of his heroism was steep, claiming his right eye and his left leg. When the other adventurers finally returned from the labyrinth, they were met with the sight of their lone protector's sacrifice, a burden of guilt that haunts them to this day. Hearing this story, she looks out at the city with a newfound perspective, realizing why the residents treat the guild master with such profound gratitude. He isn't just an administrator. He is the savior who gave everything to keep them safe. It becomes clear to her that the scar on his face is not a mark of malice, but a badge of patriotic honor. She finds it tragic that his frightening appearance now keeps people at a distance, despite the immense kindness and bravery he once displayed. Larucci arrives at the guild, searching for the guild master. He isn't at his usual post, leaving her to wonder where he could have gone as she scans the busy hall. Suddenly, Goldo peeks out from a nearby doorway, urgently beckoning her over. He gestures for silence, his voice a hushed whisper as he calls her name and tells her to come quietly. She almost greets him with her usual enthusiasm, but he frantically shushes her, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he tries to avoid drawing the attention of the chattering crowd nearby. He quickly pulls her into a private room, carefully closing the door behind them with a soft click to ensure their conversation remains unheard by anyone in the hallway. After checking the hallway one last time to confirm they weren't followed, he turns back to her. She watches him, her heart racing as she wonders what could possibly warrant such extreme secrecy. Without a word, he produces a heavy pouch and drops it onto the table, the metallic clink of coins echoing in the small room. He reveals the contents, 30 silver coins, causing her to cry out in disbelief. He immediately slams his hand down, reprimanding her for being too loud while she frantically tries to push the money back, insisting she cannot accept it without an explanation. The guild master explains that this is her rightful reward for the warehouse task. While it is normally a multi-day quest for a full party, her solo effort means the entire sum belongs to her. She stares at the coins, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the payment. He continues, emphasizing the need for absolute confidentiality, as a newcomer receiving such a massive payout would surely cause a stir among the other adventurers. She nods in solemn agreement, understanding the weight of the situation. As the tension eases slightly, he adds one more detail. The mysterious individual who saved her previously is actually an acquaintance of his. The revelation leaves her wide-eyed and speechless. She listens intently as Goldo recounts a promise made long ago. He explains that he was instructed to train anyone who presented a certain letter, viewing it as a duty to a friend. For her, this is the first real lead on the identity of the person who saved her life. As he reaches out to pat her head, he admits that while he was asked to help, he also does it because he genuinely wants to. She feels a wave of gratitude, though she can't help but wonder why her mysterious benefactor would go to such lengths to ensure her well-being. Seeking more answers, she asks what kind of person her savior truly is. He pauses, looking thoughtful as he tries to find the right words to describe an old acquaintance. He explains that the man isn't a bad person, but rather someone who tends to keep his distance from others. It has been several years since he last saw him, as the man had set out to settle some personal matters and never returned. He eventually apologizes, suggesting they save the rest of the story for another day. Though her curiosity about her savior's background remains, she nods in understanding, content to wait until the time is right. Turning his attention to the task at hand, he pulls back a heavy curtain to reveal a diverse arsenal of weaponry. He invites her to choose whichever weapon she prefers, promising that he will provide her with thorough and rigorous training regardless of her choice. After reviewing her own innate talents and realizing she already possesses a foundation in certain disciplines, she confidently selects a short sword. She presents the blade, her eyes filled with a new sense of purpose. By the fourth day of their sessions, the air is filled with the sharp ring of steel against steel. She lunges forward with surprising speed, her movements becoming more fluid with every passing hour. She grits her teeth, determined to land at least a single blow against her mentor. He, however, effortlessly evades her strikes, silently marveling at how much she has improved in such a remarkably short span of time. He chuckles heartily as the young girl collapses in a heap of exhaustion, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Despite her frustration at not landing a single blow, he offers a bit of praise for her first mock battle, though he notes with a smirk that his own reflexes haven't slowed enough to be bested by a mere rookie. As they rest, he shifts the conversation, curious about how she discovered her hidden talents. She hesitates, keeping the truth of her returning memories to herself, while he laments the injustice of her being cast out by her family despite such obvious potential. His eyes widen in genuine shock when she mentions her ability to evaluate objects. She recounts the moment of her exile, describing how a strange screen appeared before her eyes while she was inspecting a piece of fruit, revealing the nature of her appraisal skill. She listens intently as he informs her that her education will expand beyond the blade, as a woman named Fia will be providing magic lessons. While he suggests her unique skills might make her a successful merchant, she remains steadfast in her desire to live the life of an adventurer. She is then introduced to the new tutor by the guild master, who boasts that her magical abilities are among the finest in the entire kingdom. The elven woman beams at the compliment, while the young apprentice prepares herself for the mental challenges ahead. She takes her seat as the lesson begins, the air thick with anticipation. When asked about her elemental affinities, she mentally catalogs a staggering list of 10 distinct attributes, ranging from the common elements to the rare powers of light, darkness, and even the void. As she begins to list them aloud, starting with fire and wind, the tutor quickly interjects. Sensing something unusual in the girl's casual recitation, the elf stops her before she can reveal the full extent of her overwhelming magical potential. The instructor realizes that the girl lacks even the most basic understanding of the world's magical laws. It becomes clear that without books or a teacher, she has no idea just how rare it is to possess more than a couple of attributes. Because of this gap in knowledge, the teacher decides to pivot, prioritizing general education over practical spellcasting. A new, grueling schedule is established. Physical training in the morning followed by intense academic study in the afternoon, a prospect that leaves the young girl reeling. By the end of the day, she is completely spent, her body draped over a wooden bench like a discarded rag. The weight of her new life as an apprentice adventurer is fully setting in, promising many more days of exhausting labor. She is approached by a man with a gentle smile and a distinctive mark on his brow. He offers a casual greeting, catching her off guard in the middle of the guild hall. Because of this sudden encounter, she tilts her head in confusion, politely asking for his identity. He pauses for a moment, considering his response before beginning his introduction with a mysterious air. When she mentions that Goldo is currently occupied with work, the stranger hesitates, a playful glint appearing in his eyes. He quickly recovers, winking as he claims to be nothing more than an old friend of the guildmaster. He then clarifies that his visit isn't for Goldo at all, but specifically for her. As they sit together, the surrounding patrons pointedly look away, their hushed whispers and nervous glances suggesting they recognize the man, even if she does not. His presence is soon noted by Goldo, who arrives with a face contorting in a mix of shock and irritation. He demands to know why the man is there, while she can only watch the tense exchange in bewilderment. He is immediately accosted by the visitor, who lunges forward and throws an arm around the panicked guildmaster. The man laughs off the tension, admitting that an intriguing rumor brought him there in search of a little entertainment. He is soon interrupted by the arrival of Fi, whose expression sours the moment she spots the visitor. Goldo watches nervously as the elf's face scrunches in clear distaste, sensing the impending clash of personalities. She addresses him with unexpected formality, calling him master, and noting how long it has been since their last meeting. Goldo sighs, explaining that he had hoped to avoid the trouble that would surely follow if word of this visit reached the wrong ears, but the man simply brushes off the concern with a smile. The truth finally dawns on the young girl, striking her with the force of a physical blow. This casual, playful man is not just a friend of the guild, but the reigning monarch of the entire country, sitting right before her. She listens in awe as he confirms his identity as Arza Rakamadis, though he insists that since they are outside the castle walls, she should simply call him Ars. His nonchalant attitude toward his own royal status and his casual excursions leave both her and Fia completely speechless. He continues his playful interrogation, leaning in close to Larucci. He wonders aloud if Queen Emma is aware of the girl's existence, causing Larucci to recoil in a mix of pain and embarrassment while Goldo and Fi watch the chaotic exchange. The pressure of the king's attention is overwhelming, leaving the young girl drenched in a cold sweat as she struggles to process the sudden royal interest. Seeing the situation spiral, Fia takes decisive action. With a sharp command, she activates a teleportation spell, engulfing the protesting king in a brilliant light to forcibly return him to his castle. As the magical glow fades and the king's voice echoes into nothingness, a heavy silence falls over the room. Goldo cracks his neck, visibly exhausted by the monarch's antics, while Larucci stands by, still reeling from the whirlwind encounter. Despite his irritating nature, the king is a man of undeniable talent, a genius in both blade and sorcery. However, his brilliance is often overshadowed by a penchant for neglecting his duties in favor of meddling in the lives of others. With the excitement finally over, the group retires for a much-needed rest. The following morning, Larucci awakens to find a mysterious envelope resting on her bedside table, sealed with an official mark. She brings the discovery to Goldo, who rubs his temples in frustration as he reads the contents. The letter is a direct summons from the king, demanding their presence at the castle. The document is more than just paper. It is imbued with royal magic and bears a seal that cannot be ignored. To refuse would be an act of defiance against the crown itself, a risk they cannot afford to take. Resigned to their fate, the guild master announces their departure. He knows that entering the king's domain will likely lead to further complications, but there is no other choice but to face whatever the monarch has planned. In the distance, the spires of the royal castle loom against the morning sky, marking the destination of their next trial. As they approach the massive gates, the sheer scale of the royal castle leaves the young girl breathless. Her companion explains that the king himself funded this architectural marvel, using the vast wealth he accumulated during his days as an adventurer rather than relying on the national treasury. He recounts how the monarch had once been a force to be reckoned with in the guilds, rising through the ranks with startling speed. By completing countless high-level quests and hoarding treasures, he had built a legendary reputation and a fortune long before he ever wore a crown. Walking through the opulent hallways, the guild master admits that even now, he finds it difficult to reconcile the image of the man he knew with the title of royalty. The girl nods in silent agreement, her own brief encounters with the king making it hard to view him as a dignified sovereign. Their conversation is abruptly cut short by a muffled, agonized scream echoing from behind a set of heavy double doors. As they pause in confusion, an attendant calmly knocks, announcing to the occupant that his expected guests have finally arrived. He doesn't wait for an invitation, throwing the doors open with a thunderous slam as he shouts for the king. Inside, the air is thick with a whirlwind of loose parchment, fluttering like white birds caught in a gale. The source of the chaos is buried beneath a literal mountain of documents, his voice muffled as he grunts and tosses more papers into the air. Despite his predicament, he greets his visitors with a cheerful morning salutation, seemingly unbothered by the administrative avalanche consuming him. Infuriated by the display, the guild master begins pummeling the trapped monarch, berating him for wasting a sacred royal seal on such a trivial summons. The king can do little but endure the flurry of blows, weakly protesting that he only resorted to such measures because he knew they would ignore him otherwise. He eventually manages to hold up the offending letter, a mischievous glint in his eyes as he confirms their suspicions. With a playful smirk, he admits that the magical seal was the only bait strong enough to ensure their presence at the castle. Disgusted by the king's antics, the tall man turns on his heel to leave, declaring that he has had enough of these royal games. Behind him, the monarch collapses back onto the floor in a dramatic heap, whining about being abandoned. The atmosphere shifts instantly as the king's playful demeanor vanishes, replaced by a gaze of piercing intensity. He stops his friend's retreat with a single, somber sentence, revealing that the true purpose of this summons is a matter of grave importance concerning the young girl standing beside them. He watched as the queen addressed the young girl, her voice soft but heavy with the weight of a difficult truth. She questioned the child about her past, specifically her expulsion from her family home, a detail that should have been shared much sooner. Beside them, the guild master could only offer a frustrated sigh at the sudden turn of the conversation. In response to the queen's inquiry, she nodded solemnly, confirming that in addition to being labeled an abandoned child, she had also been stripped of her very name. The group sat in the quiet opulence of the drawing room, the gravity of the girl's history casting a long shadow over their meeting. This revelation caused Sina's composure to momentarily fracture, her hand tightening into a white-knuckled fist against her lap. The cruelty of such an act, erasing a child's identity entirely, was a bitter pill to swallow, and she could only murmur her understanding of the situation's depth. Sensing the girl's discomfort, she reached out with a gentle hand to stroke her hair, offering a silent apology for dredging up such painful memories. It was a rare moment of maternal tenderness from the monarch, acknowledging the hardships the young one had already endured. Larucci tried to brush it off with a small, brave smile, insisting she was all right, but the queen's focus remained sharp. Reaching into her robes, she produced a formal document, her expression shifting from sympathy to a cold, analytical resolve. She laid the parchment out on the table, explaining that it was a death certificate sent to her by a specific noble house. The document detailed the supposed demise of a child during a monster raid in the forest, a fabrication meant to tie up loose ends. As Larucci processed the sight of the official seal, the queen pointed out the most disturbing aspect of the missive, the identity of the sender. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, revealing a much darker conspiracy than a simple case of abandonment. With a look of profound sorrow and simmering anger, she looked the girl in the eye and identified the likely culprits behind the document. They were the very people who should have protected her own parents. Larucci stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock as the finality of the situation set in. The queen confirmed the grim reality. That piece of paper was, for all intents and purposes, her own death certificate, an official declaration that she no longer existed in the eyes of the law or her family. They sit in the quiet opulence of the royal chambers, where the air is thick with a sudden, chilling revelation. The queen calmly presents a formal document, her voice steady as she suggests that the parchment is, in all likelihood, a death certificate for the young girl sitting before them. She stares at the paper, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. Beside her, the king watches her reaction closely, his own expression a mask of growing concern as the weight of the situation settles over the room. He suddenly erupts in a fit of indignant rage, his voice booming through the chamber as he demands to know who would dare attempt such a blatant deception. To him, the absurdity is clear. How could there be a death report for someone who is standing right in front of them, alive and well? The document itself reveals an elegant script detailing the demise of a youth characterized by a lack of talent and distinctive, rare gray hair. The queen observes that while the gender is listed incorrectly, the physical description is an uncanny match for the girl in their presence. She reaches out to touch the paper, her gaze fixed on the name written there. The realization seems to hit her with physical force, her posture slumped as she processes the cold finality of the words. Looking down at the report resting on the ornate table, she quietly confirms the grim truth. The individuals who filed this official notice of her death were none other than her own parents, a revelation that hangs heavy in the silent room. The king scoffs at the mention of her supposed incompetence, finding the claim laughable given what he knows of her. Meanwhile, the queen remains pensive, her mind already working through a specific detail in the report that doesn't quite align with the reality she has observed. She continues her line of reasoning, noting that the guildmaster spoke highly of the girl's potential as an adventurer. Furthermore, reports from her own clandestine observers indicated that the child had even begun to show a burgeoning talent for the magical arts, directly contradicting the incompetent label. Her expression is one of deep contemplation as she voices her confusion. The stark contrast between the official record of a talentless, deceased boy and the living, capable girl before her presents a mystery that demands an explanation. He turns to her, his brow furrowed as he questions her sudden and intense interest in the matter. The air between them is charged with a new tension as the investigation into the girl's past begins in earnest. He lets out a weary sigh, his face etched with the fatigue of the day's revelations. Beside him, the queen offers a radiant, dismissive smile, brushing off his worries as trivial. She turns her attention to the young girl, requesting an explanation for the impossible, how one branded as skillless could wield such potent magic. The child nods, her voice small but steady as she prepares to recount her secret. She listens with rapt fascination as the mechanics of the god's veil are laid bare. The realization that such a high-level camouflage ability exists among the supposedly talentless leaves her breathless with wonder. It is a discovery that defies all established logic of their world. As the explanation concludes, the girl reflects on the dark day of her exile. What once felt like a life-ending catastrophe has transformed into a journey of unexpected joy. She admits, with a soft smile, that the tragedy was perhaps the greatest blessing she could have received. This heartfelt confession prompts the queen to extend an impulsive invitation, suggesting the girl remain at the castle for the night. The king immediately interjects, citing his responsibility to return her to the safety of the inn. Undeterred, the queen doubles down, her enthusiasm nearly overwhelming the confused child caught between the two monarchs. He narrows his eyes, sensing a hidden motive behind his wife's sudden hospitality. His voice drops to a low, demanding tone as he questions her true objective. The queen's confident facade flickers for a moment, a bead of sweat betraying her unease. Sensing the conversation has reached its limit, he abruptly announces their departure. The queen attempts a final plea, mentioning that a woman named Emma is furious and that having a guest might be the only way to soothe her temper. The girl, confused by the unfamiliar name, inquires about this mysterious Miss Emma. Desperation creeps into the king's voice as he pleads with her to see this not as a social visit, but as a desperate mission to save a friend from certain doom. He suddenly hoists the girl onto his shoulder and bolts for the exit as the heavy doors swing shut. During their frantic escape, he confesses that Emma is his wife, the queen, and the only person he truly fears. Once they are safely away from the castle's immediate reach, his tone softens as he returns to the matter of the falsified death certificate. He reminds her that she has every right to be furious at the betrayal of her parents. The girl gazes into the distance, her expression unreadable. She eventually offers a gentle smile, explaining that seeing the guild master's righteous fury on her behalf was more than enough to heal her own heart. He watches her, struck by her capacity for forgiveness, even as the guild master's distant, irritable shouting breaks the quiet moment. She watched as the queen's resolve hardened, the monarch declaring that if force was required to keep the girl, she would use it. Roeder, despite his apologies, remained steadfast in his defiance, prompting the queen to command her forces into position. She recoiled as a piercing screech filled the air and a torrent of ice magic erupted, forcing Roeder to shout a warning for her to stay low. The royal guard stood paralyzed by conflicting orders, unable to intervene as the chaotic magic surged around them. He seized the moment, drawing his blade with a sharp metallic ring and scooping the girl up to dash forward with a burst of speed. He grumbled about the queen's tendency to overstep her authority, his frustration evident in every stride. He leaned in to tell her to cover her ears, just before the world exploded in a deafening clash of steel. The impact of his sword against the queen's defense sent sparks flying, the sheer force of the collision vibrating through the air. They were engulfed by a primal roar that tore through the courtyard, a sound so intense it left the girl reeling with dizziness. Amidst the confusion, the surrounding soldiers were swept aside by the sheer pressure of the unfolding magical duel. She watched as the dust began to settle, and the queen stood with an eerie calmness, her gaze fixed on the girl who was now questioning the identity of the woman before her. With a gentle smile, the monarch confirmed she was indeed Emma, and then turned her attention to the need for punishing her husband's recklessness. Her decree brought a wild, almost manic grin to his face as he realized that with the queen's permission, he no longer had any reason to restrain his true power. He found his bravado short-lived. Moments later, the queen's smile remained serene while a series of heavy thuds echoed from the background where he was being soundly disciplined. She then turned back to the girl, gently confirming her name and offering a sincere apology for the chaotic scene they had just witnessed. She formally introduced herself as Emma, the king's wife, and welcomed the girl properly, even as the sounds of her husband's struggle continued to punctuate the air behind them. She stands by as Larucci contemplates the strange dynamic of the royal family, noting how much she's learned through Goldo's connections. Behind them, the king lies in a heap of rubble, a testament to the queen's swift discipline. She clutches her head in exasperation, her patience clearly at its limit with the man she calls an idiot king. The aftermath of their brief skirmish has left the monarch in tatters, both physically and in dignity. Turning her attention back to the guests, she warmly invites the young girl to stay the night at the palace as a gesture of gratitude. Meanwhile, she entrusts the guild master with the task of ensuring the king doesn't attempt to escape his impending punishment, a duty he accepts with a grim, knowing look. The invitation is met with pure, unbridled joy as the girl realizes she will be spending the night in a literal royal palace. Her eyes sparkle with excitement, a stark contrast to the heavy atmosphere of the previous moments. As they walk, the girl's curiosity gets the better of her, and she asks how the guild master came to be so well acquainted with the royal family. He explains that their bond was forged in the fires of adventure, as they all used to travel and complete quests together as a party. He goes on to reveal that even the queen was once a spirited adventurer. Despite being a noble's daughter betrothed to the king, she chose to cast aside her status to follow him into the fray. He describes her as a genius who was just as wild and uncontrollable as her husband in those days. This description triggers a terrifying shift in the air as a literal aura of bloodlust, shaped like a giant serpent, looms over him. He quickly tries to backtrack, insisting that he simply views them as dear friends rather than distant royals, though the queen's silent, menacing glare suggests he should choose his words more carefully. The tension breaks as she regains her composure, gracefully leading the way toward the dining hall. She dismisses the guild master's comments as nonsense, while the young girl follows behind, slightly bewildered by the intense and strange relationship between these powerful figures. They soon arrive at a grand dining chamber, a room of immense scale filled with ornate chandeliers and a table long enough to seat dozens. The silence of the hall emphasizes the transition from the chaotic courtyard to the formal heart of the palace. Their arrival is greeted by a young man who strides into the room with a confident smile. The guild master is surprised to see him, recognizing him as Rio, and notes how much the boy has matured in the 3 years since they last met. He looks down at the young girl with curiosity, noting her small stature. Larucci, for her part, can only stare back in confusion, wondering who this newcomer could be. Suddenly, the young man's composure breaks as he jumps to a wild conclusion, loudly demanding to know if Goldo has secretly married and why he wasn't invited to the ceremony. Goldo frantically waves his hands, desperate to correct the misunderstanding before it spirals further. Recovering his poise with a practiced, charming grace, he introduces himself as Riola's Eurycomedes, the eldest son of King Roder. He offers a warm greeting, his presence practically radiating a polished, noble aura. Because of his friendly nature, he immediately closes the distance, draping an arm around Larucci and insisting she simply call him Rio or Riolas. The sudden intimacy startles her, and she instinctively pulls back, overwhelmed by his forwardness. He continues to press the matter, suggesting that while formal titles are necessary for the public, they should speak more casually in private. Larucci shakes her head vigorously, terrified at the thought of addressing a prince with such familiarity. In response to her hesitation, he playfully seizes her hand, declaring he won't let go until she agrees to use his name. Seeing the exchange, the queen chimes in with a gentle smile, suggesting that Larucci could also refer to her as Miss Emma. As the two royals beam at her, Goldo points out the irony of her hesitation, reminding her that she already treats the king like a commoner by calling him Mr. Larucci can only offer a flustered, wordless protest as she realizes the logic of his argument. Moments later, the group moves to a magnificent dining hall, where a long table is laden with an exquisite feast under the glow of ornate chandeliers. The tension of the introductions melts away as Larucci takes her first bite, her eyes widening in pure delight at the incredible flavors. Watching her eat with such gusto, the king and queen share a quiet, satisfied look. Nearby, the atmosphere remains calm and domestic. Leafia remains engrossed in a book even at the table, while while Anna enjoys the meal in contented silence. She suggests that once the meal is finished, the girls should enjoy the royal baths. Laruchi's eyes light up with pure joy at the prospect of a proper bath, her first since arriving in this world. The facility is breathtaking, a vast hall of marble pillars and steaming water that stretches toward the horizon. As they soak in the warmth, Laruchi marvels at the sheer scale of the pool, prompting Guldo to explain that the king's personal preference for long soaks is the reason for such opulence. He eventually decides to depart, offering a gentle warning to the young girl not to stay in the heat for too long, though she is far too relaxed to move just yet. Left to her own thoughts in the quiet steam, she finds herself dreaming of a future where she might have a home of her own with such a luxury. By the following morning, the atmosphere shifts from relaxation to discipline as Rio stands across from Guldo, declaring that 3 years of training have prepared him for this challenge. He looks on with a sharp, focused gaze, while Laruchi and Anna watch from the sidelines, sensing the weight of the upcoming mock battle. Guldo accepts the challenge, noting that the prince's face betrays a much higher level of ambition than a simple bit of practice. With a sudden burst of speed, the prince lunges forward, the sharp ring of steel echoing through the training grounds as their blades meet. He maintains a relentless pace, his movements fluid and precise, earning a grunt of approval from the veteran warrior who acknowledges the boy's fine swordsmanship even as he prepares to turn the tide. The young prince finds his defense shattered when a clever slide of the blade creates a momentary opening, allowing Guldo to send him stumbling back with a heavy impact and a reminder that the path to mastery is still long. Rio reflects on his progress, admitting he still has a long way to go before he can match his father or Guldo. The veteran warrior, however, is genuinely impressed, noting that the young master's growth has already surpassed what the king was capable of at the same age. Turning to his companions, the young prince exudes a quiet but firm confidence. He dismisses any notion of false humility, declaring his intent to surpass everyone in due time, a bold statement that leaves the others in awe of his ambition. As the group prepares to depart, Amelia inquires about the king's sudden absence. The prince offers a polite apology for his father's earlier conduct, thanking them for their visit despite the chaotic turn of events that cut their meeting short. She explains that the king had urgent matters to attend to, though a dark, menacing aura seems to loom over the memory of his departure. It suggests that his urgent business might be a stern reprimand for the trouble he caused. Sensing the tension, the young girl asks if the king is being punished for the commotion. The others break into a nervous sweat, quickly advising her that some things are better left unquestioned for the sake of everyone's peace of mind. With the visit concluded, the small group makes their way across the vast, sun-drenched courtyard of the royal palace, leaving the grand spires behind as they return to the familiar streets of the city. Life soon returns to its busy rhythm, filled with hours of diligent study under the watchful eye of the elven master, rigorous combat training that leaves her breathless, and the mundane but necessary chores of the guild. Soaking in a warm bath, she finds her resolve hardening. The simple luxury of the palace has sparked a new dream of owning a home with its own tub, driving her to work even harder as an adventurer to save every coin possible. While walking through the bustling city streets, her attention is suddenly arrested by a passing carriage. Peering through the window is a familiar, elegant face, the very same woman she had seen within the castle walls, appearing unexpectedly in the common district. A new face appears in the castle, a young girl named Rosalia Aricomedes. She greets Laruchi, who is caught off guard by the sudden appearance of another member of the royal family. She blushes slightly, requesting that Laruchi call her Lia, as those close to her do. Laruchi can't help but notice the family resemblance, realizing they truly do share the same blood. As the group settles in, Leafia graciously serves tea, offering some to Laruchi while the young girl thanks her politely. The king, Roder, joins the conversation, explaining his plan to employ Laruchi as Lea's personal tutor. He mentions having heard from the master that Laruchi is exceptionally gifted in her studies. Hearing his proposal, the young girl hesitates, expressing concern that her schedule is already quite full, despite her desire to help. Suddenly, Fia interrupts her with an enthusiastic shout, eager to join the conversation. Seeing the girl's dejected expression, she quickly clarifies that she isn't abandoning her. Rather, she suggests that the time Laruchi usually spends studying with her should now be dedicated to her new role as a tutor. She continues, praising Laruchi's incredible memory and revealing that she has already taught her everything one would learn in a standard school. She points out that the advanced books Laruchi has been reading are beyond what even well-read elves typically know. While her explanation makes the task seem less daunting, Laruchi sighs, realizing she still needs time to practice her magic. In response to her concerns, Roder steps forward with a confident smile, sparks of energy crackling around his hand. He offers to personally teach her magic once her tutoring duties are done, boasting that he was his master's finest disciple. He offers a gentle smile, wondering if his presence as an instructor makes her uneasy, but she quickly shakes her head, her gratitude shining as brightly as the magical flower he conjures for her. Following that encounter, she sits in the quiet of the cafeteria, thoughtfully chewing on a sandwich as she contemplates her new reality. For the next month, she will serve as a private tutor. Later that evening, she shares her plans with her friends at the guild, explaining that she will be escorted home by her new mentors, though the guild master worries that the daily trek to the castle might prove too taxing. They discuss the strange sight of royalty and high-ranking officials taking on such personal tasks, wondering if it is truly wise to let the king and the guild master handle what some might consider menial chores. Despite the concerns, she throws herself into her work with exhausting fervor, scrubbing away until the guild master intervenes, reminding her that her schedule is already packed with morning practice, warehouse duties, tutoring, and magic lessons. He watches her with a mixture of pride and concern, urging her not to overextend herself, to which she responds with a light-hearted laugh and a promise to stay mindful of her limits. Time passes quickly under this demanding routine, and soon 3 weeks have slipped away, the castle walls standing silent under the evening sky. Within those walls, she and the young princess have found a comfortable rhythm, their initial awkwardness replaced by a genuine bond as they lean over their books, the princess seeking guidance on a difficult passage. She eventually reports this steady progress to the king, noting that they are nearly finished with the advanced curriculum and are ready to transition into the next phase of their magical training. In response, he decides it is time for a new introduction, presenting a man named Mr. Wallace, who shares her quiet appreciation for the knowledge found within books. He leads the way to the library, noting that his son is usually found there. Inside, a young man with glasses sits quietly among stacks of books, his focus entirely on the pages before him. The king introduces the scholar as Wallace, his other son, while apologizing for the delay in their meeting. Wallace looks up, adjusting his glasses, and admits that once he starts reading, the outside world simply ceases to exist for him. Seeing the young girl's eyes light up at the mention of literature, Wallace asks if she shares his passion. She enthusiastically confirms, mentioning her recent interest in elven history, which clearly piques the prince's curiosity. A fast friendship forms over their shared love of knowledge, with Wallace offering to lend her any volume she desires. Later, as she departs the castle grounds, she drifts through the air with a light heart, her magical flight reflecting her joyful spirit. Before she can leave, the king stops her to offer a reward of 5 gold coins, expressing his deep gratitude for the remarkable improvement in Princess Leah's academic performance. He then asks if she would be willing to continue her role as a private tutor, a request she accepts with a triumphant shout. Yet, the king's expression darkens as he delivers a stern warning. She must remain vigilant. This sudden caution confuses her, as she mentally tallies the influential figures who have shown her nothing but kindness, from the guildmaster to the royal magicians. She wonders why such a peaceful life would require a guard. Her thoughts are interrupted by a sharp realization as the king continues his explanation, his voice carrying a weight she hadn't expected. He clarifies that her growing reputation has made her a target for political maneuvering, with some factions even considering abduction to force her into a noble lineage. To her surprise, he reveals that a secret guard has been watching over her movements for some time. When she mentions the mysterious figure in black she had already spotted, the king can only smile at her keen perception. She stood before the king and queen, receiving praise for her keen senses. The king admitted that few could detect a presence so effortlessly on their first try, yet his expression remained grave. He cautioned her that while her progress was remarkable, she must never let her guard down, as her growing importance made her a target for those who would exploit her talents. As she made her way through the quiet corridors, a sudden rush of air swept past her, a phantom sensation that made her pause and look back into the empty hallway. Once safely back in the solitude of her room, she stood by her bedside, pondering the strange feeling. She wondered if she had truly developed a new ability to sense others, and with a focused thought, she summoned her status to confirm her suspicions. The shimmering interface materialized before her eyes, revealing a list of newly acquired talents. Her heart raced as she saw wordless incantation and presence detection added to her repertoire, realizing that her magical potential was expanding even faster than she had imagined. The prospect of casting spells without a single word filled her with a quiet excitement. Looking out into the moonlit night from her window, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Since being brought into this world, she had encountered so many individuals who had shaped her journey, and the weight of those connections felt like a warm embrace against the darkness. The city lay quiet under the stars, a stark contrast to the fear she had felt when a malevolent deity first marked her. Despite the initial uncertainty of her reincarnation, the kindness of the people she had met convinced her that she was exactly where she was meant to be. With a final, weary prayer for the future, she let out a soft sigh and collapsed onto the soft mattress. Her thoughts drifted to the one who had sent her here, hoping that her progress would eventually lead her to properly reach him. Soon, the rhythmic sound of her breathing filled the room as she drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, the challenges of the day finally fading into the shadows of the night. The morning light filters into a room far grander than any he has ever known. As his eyes flutter open, a wave of confusion washes over him. This is certainly not the modest lodging where he usually rests his head. He pushes himself up, his movements heavy with the lingering fog of sleep. Looking around the vast, ornate chamber, the realization begins to dawn that a new life has truly begun upon his waking. His gaze then falls upon a familiar figure slumped in a nearby chair. It is Goldo, fast asleep, prompting the boy to wonder why the man would choose to spend the night in such an uncomfortable position right by his side. The sight triggers a rush of memories from the previous day. He vividly recalls the sound of papers rustling as the headmaster meticulously organized the documents that would change his life forever. She had spoken with a gentle warmth, explaining that his status as an abandoned child made the legalities surprisingly simple. With those few signatures, she declared that they were now, in every sense of the word, a family. Yet, even with the official decree, the weight of this new reality feels almost surreal as he contemplates the sudden shift in his world. The man in the chair finally stirs, rubbing the sleep from his eyes as he notices the boy is already dressed and enjoying a warm drink. He grumbles good-naturedly about how some people are far too bright, and cheerful so early in the morning. From across the room, the headmaster watches the pair with a serene smile. Seeing them together, she feels a profound sense of contentment, certain that she couldn't be any happier with this new arrangement. She claps her hands together to draw their attention, suggesting that since the final formalities will take some time, they should both simply move into the castle. While the boy worries about being an imposition, Goldo is left utterly speechless that the invitation extends to him as well. He considers the proposal, realizing that living in the castle means he can be with his son all the time. With a nod, he agrees, much to the delight of the young boy beside him. The headmaster expresses her gratitude, explaining that she wants him to remain as Rio's personal tutor, as the commute from the inn was becoming a burden. Despite his agreement, he remains slightly conflicted, muttering about the work he still has left at the inn. His concerns are quickly drowned out by Rio's infectious excitement. The young girl is thrilled at the prospect of continued training, knowing how much she looks up to him. The headmaster smiles, noting that having him close by will be a great boon for the girl's development. He sits with a stoic, almost grim expression, which prompts a light-hearted jab from the headmaster. She points out that his intimidating presence made him a rather poor fit for a receptionist anyway, as he tended to scare the guests. Softening her tone, she acknowledges his unwavering dedication to his duties and insists that he has earned the right to some well-deserved rest within the castle walls. As the new living arrangements are settled, a shimmering light of appraisal is cast, revealing the hidden potential within the young boy. A detailed ledger of his growth appears, officially documenting him as the son of the formidable warrior. The records show a healthy child with burgeoning stats, a testament to the care he has received. Looking upon the magical readout, the headmaster wears a look of quiet satisfaction. The numbers confirm what she already suspected. The boy is thriving under their collective care, his physical and magical attributes showing steady, promising progress. The seasons turn, and a full year passes in the blink of an eye. The grand halls of the castle are now filled with festive decorations as the household gathers for a joyous occasion. Rio and the others surround the boy, their voices rising in a chorus of celebration to wish him a happy birthday, a concept that leaves him momentarily stunned. He tilts his head in confusion, admitting that the idea of celebrating the day of one's birth is entirely foreign to him. The admission casts a brief shadow of sympathy over the faces of his friends, who realize just how much of a normal childhood he had been denied before coming to the castle. Sensing his uncertainty, the headmaster steps forward with a reassuring smile to explain the situation. She reminds him that as a recognized member of the nobility now, such milestones are important, and having secured his official records, she has designated this very day as his true birthday. The celebration holds one more surprise, as it is revealed that this day is doubly special. To the shock of the rugged warrior, it is announced that today is his birthday as well, a fact that leaves him looking uncharacteristically flustered and caught off guard. This shared milestone brings a radiant smile to the boy's face, as he marvels at the incredible coincidence. He exclaims that it feels like fate itself brought them together to share this day, while the man, though clearly embarrassed by the attention, can't help but feel a deep sense of belonging in this new family. He finds himself overcome by a sudden coughing fit, his face flushing as he struggles to catch his breath, while the young boy watches with a mix of concern and confusion. They transition from the morning's commotion to a lavish spread of tea and sweets, where the table is laden with tiered trays of pastries and fresh fruit for a moment of quiet refinement. The group later washes away the heat of the day in the steaming waters of the bath, the boy stretching his arms wide with a blissful sigh while his father looks on. Their peaceful atmosphere is suddenly interrupted by a loud splash as the maid, ALS, joins them. Startled, the man demands to know when she arrived, but she remains unfazed, explaining that her workload has lightened considerably thanks to the boy's assistance, allowing her to finish her duties early. She reaches out to gently pat the boy's head, expressing her genuine gratitude for his help with the calculations and paperwork, admitting that while she considers it simple work, the generous pay makes the effort more than worthwhile. As they soak, the boy's curiosity turns toward their own home, and he asks if his father's house also possesses such a bath, prompting the man to admit that while a bath exists, it is far from this grand. This revelation sparks a quiet determination in the child as he realizes the existence of a bath at home is a significant detail. He reflects on his savings, looking at a jar filled with bronze coins and considering the cost of gear and replacements. He chides himself for not asking sooner, realizing that with careful management, he might be able to contribute to the household's comforts. His thoughts of domestic life are soon interrupted by the headmaster, who leans in with a knowing look to ask if he has given any thought to the Lactoria Academy, planting the seed of a much larger future. The academy itself stands as a grand testament to education, its imposing gates welcoming students of all backgrounds, from humble traders to the highest members of the royal family. Laruku reflects on the sudden news of his enrollment next year. He learns that the academy is surprisingly tolerant, even allowing students to work as adventurers while pursuing their studies in swordsmanship and magic. ALS clarifies the situation, explaining the underlying reason for the proposal and how it fits into the household's plans. Because Rio's grades have improved, she is being transferred to the highest-ranking class. However, the young girl is visibly anxious about keeping up with the rigorous lessons and desperately wants Laruku to attend with her to put her mind at ease. She is shown struggling with her studies, overwhelmed by the pressure of her new academic standing. He responds with a bright smile, expressing his genuine happiness to join her at the academy. ALS is impressed by how quickly he understands the weight of the request, noting that the concept of a school in this world is something he has adapted to with remarkable ease. Suddenly, the calm of the bath is shattered as Guldo erupts in a massive splash of water. He shouts in protest, fearing that his son is taking on too much work and worrying about the potential for bullying or even being ambushed by unsavory characters on the way to school. The boy tries to soothe his father's frantic concerns, telling him he's exaggerating and that everything will be all right. He looks him in the eye and firmly states that he actually wants to go to school, showing a level of maturity that catches the older man off guard. Seeing the determination in his son's eyes, the large man lets out a heavy sigh and relents. He admits that if the boy's mind is made up, he has nothing more to say against it, though a new, intense resolve begins to flicker in his gaze as he considers the implications. With a sudden surge of energy, he flexes his powerful muscles and declares that he will personally oversee the boy's training. He vows to make him strong enough to handle any danger that might come his way, his expression turning fierce and determined as he prepares for this new task. Watching this display, ALS whispers to the boy, asking him to intervene if his father starts to go overboard with the training. The young protagonist can only manage a nervous smile, realizing that his father is a massive worrywart and that his daily schedule is about to become much more grueling. Laruku bids farewell to his companions, thanking them as he prepares to depart. Rio, brimming with confidence, clenches her fists and cheers him on, assuring him that he will undoubtedly succeed. As he walks away, he reflects on the grueling training his father put him through. He hopes that the intensity of those sessions will allow him to handle whatever challenges the academy throws his way, even as he feels the weight of the upcoming exam. Entering the grand halls of the first examination area, the young boy finds himself surrounded by other hopeful candidates. He glances around, taking in the scale of the institution and the serious expressions of his peers. Once inside the designated room, the heavy doors are sealed shut. A stern-looking instructor stands at the front, calling for silence and ensuring every student has taken their assigned seat. The man introduces himself as Carl, a magic instructor at the academy, and announces the commencement of the written portion. With a swift motion, he activates a magical circle, preparing to distribute the test materials. Sheets of paper begin to drift through the air, guided by an invisible force. He watches in awe as the documents flutter down, landing perfectly on each student's desk with a light touch. With the papers distributed, the proctor sets a large hourglass on his desk, the sand beginning its steady descent. He gives the signal to start, and the room immediately fills with the sound of scratching pens. Upon scanning the questions, a wave of relief washes over him. He realizes that the material is identical to what he studied during his lessons with Miss Elia, and the answers come to him almost instantly. Having completed the task with remarkable speed, he approaches the front of the room. He hands his finished paper to a surprised Carl, who looks down at the hourglass to see that hardly any time has passed. He can hardly believe his eyes, whispering urgently for the boy to keep his voice down as the other examinees are still working. It has barely been 15 minutes, yet the child stands before him, finished with the entire written portion. Handing over a document with a swift motion, he instructs the young prodigy to take the form and proceed immediately to the second examination hall. The boy accepts the paper with a polite nod, ready for the next challenge. Upon entering the next hall, the boy breathes a sigh of relief, finding the previous test far simpler than he had anticipated. His arrival catches the second proctor off guard, as she notes with a smile that he is the very first student to complete the initial phase. She begins to outline the parameters of the second trial, explaining that it is a test of magical precision rather than raw power. The objective is to strike a series of targets within 100 seconds using any magical attribute, provided he avoids collateral damage or wide-area spells. With a final word of encouragement, she reminds him to remain behind the designated line as he prepares himself. He takes his stance, focusing his mind on the task ahead and ignoring the pressure of the ticking clock. The signal is given, and the air erupts with magical discharge as the boy realizes the sheer number of targets. He knows that balancing rapid fire with pinpoint accuracy is the only way to succeed within the time limit. Recalling the rigorous training sessions he endured under Alza's watchful eye, he begins to systematically pick off the targets. His movements are fluid and practiced, each strike finding its mark with mechanical efficiency. As the final seconds tick away, he unleashes one last precise bolt just as the proctor calls time. The last target falls, and the tension in the room finally breaks as the hourglass runs dry. Though he is visibly drained and feels a knot of tension in his stomach from the intense concentration, he feels a sense of accomplishment. The proctor hands him his results, directing him toward the final stage of the examination process. Arriving at the third hall, he is met with an unexpected sight. The formidable instructor, Morris, is slumped in his chair, snoring loudly. The boy stares in disbelief at the sleeping giant who is supposed to be his next evaluator. He jolts awake as the boy's voice rings out, demanding attention for the examination. The sudden noise leaves the proctor's ears ringing, his previous slumber shattered by the young candidate's arrival. Still shaking off the remnants of his nap, the man explains that his early arrival led to his drowsiness. He gestures toward a rack of equipment, instructing the boy to select a weapon for the upcoming trial. Once the boy chooses a practice blade, the proctor outlines the parameters of the third exam, a weapon-based duel where all magic is prohibited, save for physical stat augmentations. The young candidate examines the dulled edge of his sword, acknowledging the terms. With the rules established, the two exchange formal introductions. The large man identifies himself as Morris, the head of combat training, while the boy offers his own name, gripping his sword with newfound focus. The veteran warrior wastes no time, declaring that the premise is simple: A single successful strike on him will result in a pass. He lunges forward, his blade clashing against the boy's with a sharp metallic ring. Gritting his teeth against the force of the blow, the young candidate struggles to hold his ground. Morris observes with a smirk that the boy possesses enough raw strength to block a direct attack, despite his small stature. The proctor laughs heartily, boasting of his daily training regimen as he maintains a relentless offensive. Feeling the tremors in his arms, the boy realizes that a prolonged battle of attrition will only lead to his defeat. Deciding to change tactics, he activates a strength amplification spell and vanishes, reappearing instantly behind his opponent. The sudden maneuver catches the seasoned warrior off guard, his eyes widening in surprise. Seeing an opening, the boy swings his blade with everything he has, certain that this strike will end the match. However, the expected impact is met with a sudden reversal, leaving the candidate stumbling as he realizes his opponent moved even faster. Morris stands composed, casually mentioning that he never agreed to refrain from using his own stat augmentations to defend himself. He moved with effortless grace, sidestepping every desperate swing the boy made. With a casual flick of his wrist, he sent the child stumbling, watching as the young challenger nearly lost his footing entirely. The boy gripped his practice sword with trembling hands, his breath coming in ragged gasps. It was a bitter realization. His opponent wasn't just fighting him. He was playing with him, treating the entire duel like a mere diversion. He pleaded for a moment to catch his breath, but the veteran swordsman simply whistled a jaunty tune, looking entirely unbothered. With a smirk, the man warned that such a pathetic display would never earn him a passing grade, even with time still on the clock. The swordsman's eyes widened in genuine shock as a sudden surge of power radiated from the boy, channeling every ounce of his mana into his legs for a final, desperate burst of strength amplification. The young challenger lunged forward with a speed that defied his small stature. The impact left the older man coughing and clutching his side, forced to admit that he had underestimated the child's resolve. Wiping his mouth, he gestured for the boy to hand over his examination form, conceding that the strike was more than enough to earn his approval. He scanned the parchment, his eyes lingering on the family name written in bold letters. A look of recognition dawned on his face as he asked if the boy was indeed the son of the legendary Goldo Valtoris. The boy watched as the heavy ink stamp slammed down onto his papers, officially marking his success. The examiner's stern demeanor vanished, replaced by a boisterous laugh as he recalled his days adventuring in the same party as the boy's father, his excitement nearly overwhelming the small student. The veteran waved a friendly farewell, promising to see the young talent again within the academy's walls. As the boy turned to leave, the administrative proctor collected his final documents, informing him that the official results would be displayed on the notice board in 2 days' time. He stepped out into the crisp air of the city, where the loud, boisterous cheers of his father immediately greeted him. Despite the man's embarrassing volume, the boy couldn't help but smile, quietly confirming that the day's trials had ended in victory. The day after the entrance exam, the sun rose over the academy's spires. ALS greeted Laruku warmly, noting his perfect timing. She relayed a message from Wallace, the librarian, who had finally secured a specific item they had been discussing. Following the lead, the young boy made his way to the quiet halls of the library. Wallace sat behind his desk, peering through his glasses as the door creaked open, acknowledging the arrival with a knowing look. He handed over a thin volume, expressing his hope that it would be put to good use after the considerable effort spent tracking it down. The book, titled The Fun Way of Growing Rice, featured a cheerful, anthropomorphic grain on its cover, promising a delicious outcome. His eyes sparkled with pure joy as he clutched the manual to his chest. The prospect of finding something so familiar in this world brought a wide, radiant smile to his face. He thanked the librarian repeatedly, his excitement bubbling over. Wallace simply nodded, telling him that since he maintained the library, the boy could return the book whenever he was finished with it. Later that night, by the soft glow of a lamp, he pored over the pages and made a startling discovery. The book contained handwritten notes in Japanese, leading him to wonder if the author was another soul who had been reincarnated into this world, driven by a desire to spread the knowledge of rice. While he was lost in thought, the door clicked open and his father stepped in, fresh from a bath. Goldo expressed surprise at finding his son still awake at such a late hour, his presence a stark contrast to the quiet scholarly atmosphere. The boy explained his find, grateful that he had taken the chance to ask Wallace about the existence of rice in this world. His father chuckled, advising him not to overwork himself before heading off to get some rest. Left alone once more, he returned to the text, the mystery of the previous world's influence lingering in the quiet night. He settled in for a bit more reading, determined to uncover every secret the manual held. He sets the book aside as the night deepens, the click of the latch echoing in the quiet room. The mystery of the Japanese notes lingers in his mind, but for now, rest is required. Later, he finds himself soaking in the warmth of a large bath alongside his father. The steam rises in thick plumes as they relax after a grueling day of physical exertion. He breaks the silence, pointing out that his physical growth and improved sword skills should grant him more freedom. He boldly asks for permission to venture outside the town walls, only to be met with a sharp, immediate refusal. The rejection sends him sinking into the water in a fit of silent frustration, blowing bubbles as his father begins a familiar lecture. The elder man reminds him that this isn't a game and that safety comes first. He listens as his father pleads with him not to cause such worry, emphasizing that the world beyond the gates is far more dangerous than a child can imagine. Internally, however, the boy remains undeterred. His secret status screen reveals that through his relentless daily training, He has already maximized his luck and dexterity, possessing skills that far exceed his youthful appearance. He eventually concedes, though he quickly pivots to a new proposal. If he successfully enrolls in the academy, he requests a celebratory gift, the right to at least explore the immediate outskirts of the city. The request catches his father off guard, leading to a moment of pained deliberation and a dramatic groan of surrender. Seeing his father finally cave, the boy's face lights up with a triumphant, joyful expression. Their private conversation is interrupted when a muscular young man and a young girl, Rio, join them in the steaming water. The newcomer notes how much the boy has filled out, a testament to the rigorous daily training sessions. The older youth flexes his own impressive physique, joking that perhaps he should challenge the boy's father to another duel. In response, the father lets out a weary laugh, jokingly asking the young man to go easy on him this time. As the group settles into the shared warmth of the bath, the father sighs, wondering aloud what kind of trouble might be coming next. His suspicion is quickly addressed as the young girl informs them that they are being summoned by the head of the household. The steam-filled bathhouse is a place of supposed relaxation, but the atmosphere is thick with a silent competition. Goldo sits submerged, his face flushed from the rising temperature, while Rio watches from the side, noting that someone is searching for them. She suggests that if the heat is becoming unbearable, there is no shame in stepping out, but the challenge has already been set. He finally reaches his limit, erupting from the water with a desperate splash as the heat becomes too much to endure. Across from him, Laruku remains still, claiming a hollow victory through sheer stubbornness before his own strength fails. The boy wobbles precariously, his vision swimming as the effects of the prolonged soak take their toll. The man attempts to salvage his dignity, being fanned by attendants while insisting that his pride as a master of the bath remains intact despite his retreat. Below him, Laruku has completely succumbed to the heat, lying face down on the tiles in a state of total exhaustion. It is a Pyrrhic victory, leaving the young boy unable to even stand on his own. He carries the unconscious boy on his back, moving through the grand hallways of the estate toward an urgent appointment. They are met by the headmaster, whose expression is unreadable as she observes the bedraggled pair. The formality of the setting contrasts sharply with the disheveled state of the father and son. They enter the private chambers where the headmaster awaits, her presence commanding and serene. She looks down at the boy, who is slowly beginning to stir from his heat-induced stupor, his head resting heavily on his father's shoulder. The weight of the upcoming conversation hangs heavy in the air. Outside the imposing architecture of the academy, the news of the summons spreads. The results of the entrance exams were not expected so soon. There is a sense of confusion regarding why the headmaster requested Laruku's presence immediately upon his arrival, bypassing the usual public postings. She delivers the news with a bluntness that cuts through the room's tension, stating clearly that they cannot permit Laruku's acceptance into the academy. The declaration is met with stunned silence, the shock visible on the faces of both the boy and his father as their expectations are shattered in an instant. He finds his voice, questioning the reasoning behind such a harsh decision when he knows his son's performance was exemplary. He argues that Laruku's scores and skills were surely enough to pass, his protective instincts flaring as he seeks justice for the boy's hard work. She remains calm, explaining that the problem isn't that his scores were lacking, but rather that they were far too high. She reveals the startling truth. There is simply nothing left for the academy to teach a student who has already surpassed their curriculum's limits. He protests in disbelief, recalling the immense struggle he felt during the dueling and magic portions of the exam. To him, it felt like he barely scraped by, yet the headmaster insists that his perception of his own power is vastly different from the reality of his overwhelming talent. He listens as the headmaster explains the true nature of the examination, which was designed to measure a student's capacity to wield magic under the crushing weight of a time limit. She continues her assessment, labeling him a child of extraordinary talent and suggesting that his potential would be better served in the field as a guardian or an adventurer rather than within the confines of a classroom. He, however, can only stare back in stunned silence, beads of sweat forming as the weight of her rejection sinks in. Nearby, the instructor Morris scratches his head in contemplation while speaking with a colleague named Niza, questioning if the boy would truly gain anything from the academy's curriculum. Despite the logic, he remains defiant, his voice trembling as he tries to voice his own desires. The veteran warrior poses a final, philosophical question, asking if academic study is truly the only path one can take at such an institution. The headmaster remains silent, her gaze fixed on the young boy before her. Outside the meeting room, other students, including a young elf and a girl with feline features, go about their day, unaware of the life-altering decision being made within. Turning her attention back to the boy's father, she admits that Goldo's perspective has merit, even jesting that perhaps she is becoming too soft-hearted in her old age. She then reaches out to him, offering a sincere apology for the confusion and trouble the unusual examination process has caused. Amidst the heavy atmosphere, the young girl Rio beams with excitement, her eyes sparkling as she declares that the academy would be honored to welcome him as a student after all. Behind her, Morris and the others watch the scene unfold with a mix of amusement and relief. With the decision finally made, he begins the arduous task of packing his belongings, a heavy trunk landing with a dull thud on the floor. He realizes that with his room now empty, he can simply store the rest of his gear within his magical item box. As the sun rises over the spires of the great fortress, he and his father prepare to leave the castle behind, ready to begin a new chapter of their journey. He stands with his young friend, Rio, as the reality of his departure sets in. The girl's eyes well with tears, her hands trembling as she asks if he is truly leaving. He explains that his decision to live with his father once the academy start date was set has been acknowledged, though the parting is clearly difficult for both. Seeing the young girl's distress, the headmaster gently places a hand on her head, offering comfort while reminding her not to trouble the boy too much. Nearby, Goldo watches the exchange, acknowledging the bond the children have formed during their time at the castle. Wiping away a tear, Rio looks up with a glimmer of hope and asks if she might be allowed to visit and play. A bright, genuine smile breaks across his face as he immediately agrees, welcoming the idea of future reunions. The moment of departure finally arrives, and the father and son stand at the edge of the castle grounds, looking back at the home they are leaving behind. They offer a sincere word of thanks for the 2 years of care they received, while from the balcony above, their friends wave a bittersweet farewell. As they begin their journey on foot, Goldo's thoughts turn to the practicalities of their new, independent life. He muses aloud about their next steps, realizing that without the castle staff to provide for them, he will likely have to learn how to cook for the two of them. Hearing his father's concern, the boy interjects with sudden enthusiasm, revealing a secret he has been keeping. He proudly announces that he possesses the preparation skill, which means he can take over the culinary duties for their household. This revelation leaves Goldo utterly stunned, his jaw dropping as he questions when such an ability was acquired. The boy simply laughs, explaining that it is a skill he has held since the very beginning, though his father remains skeptical given that he has never seen his son even attempt to cook. The man remains in a state of disbelief, staring blankly as he tries to process the implications of his young son possessing a specialized crafting skill. To prove his point, the boy demonstrates his prowess, expertly handling pots and pans with a level of finesse that defies his age. Goldo is even more shocked to discover that his son's skill is already at level 3, allowing him to prepare complex dishes that the man has never even seen before. Having settled into their new surroundings, the pair takes a moment to rest on a bench beneath the shade of a tree. With the immediate worry of their next meal resolved, Goldo suggests they head out to gather groceries after lunch, a plan that the boy meets with a cheerful shout of agreement. He walked through the bustling streets, a warm snack in hand, as the locals greeted him with familiar smiles. His father observed the boy's easy rapport with the townsfolk, noting how quickly he had become a beloved figure in the community since their arrival from the distant countryside. As they prepared to head toward their new residence, the conversation turned to the geography of the region. The boy listened intently as his father explained that while their destination was remote, it still lay within the safety of the local borders. The journey concluded before a structure of staggering proportions. The sheer scale of the estate left the young boy breathless, its grand facade looming over them like a monument of stone and glass. Stunned by the opulence, he questioned if his father truly resided in such a vast place alone. With a somber nod, the man confirmed the reality of their situation, hinting at a deeper story behind the mansion's existence. He began to recount the history of the home, explaining that it had started as a modest dwelling purchased with the meager savings of a fledgling adventurer. The memory of his early struggles seemed to weigh on him as he spoke of the incident with the dragon. Having survived the ordeal, he described a time of great peril where a hard-won victory against a beast had left him broken and confined to a hospital bed for months. Upon his eventual return, he found that his simple home had been transformed beyond recognition by those he had protected. While the renovation was a grand gesture of gratitude from the townspeople, the man admitted that the resulting manor was far too cavernous for a solitary life. The echoes of the empty halls had been his only company for a long time. Reaching out, he placed a gentle hand on his son's head, his expression softening with genuine relief. The presence of the boy finally filled the void of the massive house, turning a monument of debt into a true home. Determined to contribute to their new life, the boy soon found himself in the expansive kitchen, surrounded by fresh ingredients. He carefully weighed his options, deciding on a hearty vegetable soup and roast meat, though the pressure of his first real attempt at cooking weighed heavily on his young shoulders. After a period of focused effort and careful seasoning, the aroma of a successful meal filled the air. With a triumphant smile and a quick taste of his creation, he celebrated the completion of his first culinary contribution to their shared household. He stands proudly by the table as the savory aroma of the stew fills the room, drawing an appreciative comment from his father. With a bashful chuckle, the boy admits his confidence in the dish he has prepared, eager to see if it meets expectations. The man takes his first bite, and an immediate sensation washes over him, his face flushing with an unexpected intensity of flavor. It is as if every nerve is alight with the quality of the meal, leaving him momentarily speechless and overwhelmed by the delicious taste. As he continues to eat with gusto, he declares the meal a true treat, much to the relief of the young cook. Impressed by the boy's talent, he jokingly assigns him permanent cooking duty, a responsibility the child accepts with a determined smile as night falls over their new home, marking the official start of their life together. A few days had passed since the move into his father's house. Goldo sat back from the table, letting out a satisfied sigh after a hearty meal. He watched as his son cleared the table, laughing heartily and remarking on how gratifying it was to cook for someone who ate with such gusto. The clatter of dishes filled the room as the boy worked. The young boy insisted on finishing the chores himself, urging his father to go ahead and take a relaxing bath. Goldo apologized for leaving so much of the work to him, but the child simply smiled, noting that he would be the one relying on his father the following day. Later that evening, he retreated to his own quarters, flopping onto the soft mattress with a sense of pure joy at having a room to himself. Just as he was settling in, a sudden realization struck him. and he sat up with a start. He activated his unique ability, the useful box, and watched as a shimmering, angelic statue materialized from the void. After retrieving the artifact from where he had stored it, he sat on the edge of his bed, holding the small, ornate figure close. He closed his eyes in a moment of quiet reflection, offering a prayer to Samadhi and expressing his gratitude for another peaceful day in this new world. With a soft thud, he placed the statue on his bedside table. As he drifted toward sleep, a strange, ethereal light began to emanate from his body, casting a soft glow across the darkened room. He eventually succumbed to exhaustion, dismissing the faint light as a mere trick of his tired mind before falling into a deep slumber. The next morning, the boy was already dressed and prepared for the day when his father opened the door to check on him, surprised to find him so ready. He is greeted warmly by a massive, bearded man named Doldas as they approach the guild, the boisterous adventurer's voice booming across the path. The boisterous man laughs, slapping his friend's back with enough force to make him wince, noting that the warrior had previously claimed his house was too large to live in alone. He explains that his own father was a carpenter, and his entire group, known as Doldas's party, had actually assisted in the construction of the massive residence. This revelation shocks the other adventurers, while the leader suddenly realizes he has blurted out a secret that his friend had explicitly asked him to keep. As the celebration begins, the young boy inquires about his father's ability to handle liquor, leading the veteran to suggest jokingly a drinking challenge. He then asks the boy if he is familiar with the legendary dwarves, to which the child enthusiastically replies that he has read much about them. The veteran adventurer describes the dwarves as peerless drinkers capable of emptying an entire tavern's stock in a single sitting, leaving the boy wide-eyed with wonder. However, the truth is even more impressive, as a memory surfaces of Guldo actually out-drinking a dwarf, roaring for more ale while his opponent lay defeated under the table. Later, as the group enters a bustling establishment, they notice a strange atmosphere filled with hushed whispers and wary glances from the locals. They observe several unfamiliar faces among the crowd, leading them to speculate whether the sudden influx of strangers signals the discovery of a new dungeon nearby. He shivers, feeling a heavy, oppressive presence looming over him in the darkness. Turning away from the unsettling sensation, he and his son encounter a composed woman with pointed ears and spectacles who greets them, noting their arrival is perfectly timed. She expresses a need for assistance, and the young boy immediately offers his help, eager to be of service. Leading them to a seemingly solid wall, she simply steps through the surface, revealing it to be an illusion crafted from pure magical energy. Following her into the hidden space, the seasoned warrior admits his surprise at such a secret existing within the guild's walls. The elf explains that the guild master established this private residence years ago to eliminate the need for a daily commute. Suddenly, a violent crash echoes through the room as a door is thrown open, the sound of shattering objects filling the air. In the ensuing chaos, the father frantically digs through a mountain of fallen items, desperately calling out to ensure his son hasn't been buried. Seeing the disaster, the woman pleads for their help to clear the wreckage and extract the guild master from beneath the debris. She clarifies that the guild master had attempted to tidy the room moments ago, only to be completely submerged by the sheer volume of clutter. She was nowhere to be found in the first two rooms, which Laruku and Guldo had just finished cleaning to the point of total exhaustion. Lala expressed her sincere gratitude for their help as they slumped in their chairs, catching their breath after the grueling labor. However, her expression quickly shifted to one of grim determination as she realized the guildmaster was still missing. This left only one final room to search, a prospect that seemed to carry a heavy, almost menacing weight. Stepping forward, she extended her arms, chanting an incantation that summoned intricate, glowing geometric seals into the air. The magical energy hummed with power as she prepared to secure the area before they dared to enter. He watched in disbelief, questioning the necessity of using such high-level magic just for organizing a room. Lala countered that the barrier was a vital precaution, ensuring they would be shielded from any potentially lethal falling objects within the notoriously cluttered space. Upon entering, they were greeted by a staggering sight of chaos, with mountains of books and artifacts piled high. She let out a sigh of relief, thankful that their arrival hadn't triggered an immediate avalanche of the precarious stacks. The young boy marveled at how the towers of junk seemed to defy gravity, appearing as though a single touch would send everything tumbling. Lala observed that the items were stacked in a way that was almost miraculously stable, despite the apparent mess. As he peered deeper into the labyrinth of debris, something caught his eye. Behind a wall of boxes, a presence began to reveal itself, hidden within the shadows of the clutter. A woman wearing an oversized, star-adorned wizard's hat suddenly peered over the stacks, greeting them with a cheerful surprise. Recognizing her as Miss Fia, Lala immediately put the group to work, asking Laruku to help shift some of the heavy boxes that blocked their path. She grunted with effort as she heaved a large crate, while Fia looked on, seemingly delighted by the unexpected company. The guildmaster's casual demeanor stood in stark contrast to the physical labor being performed by her subordinates. This lack of awareness clearly grated on her, as she fixed Fia with a dark, shadowed glare. She had no patience for the guildmaster's feigned surprise, her frustration boiling over at the woman's apparent disregard for the mess she had created. She lunges, seizing the guildmaster by the collar as the girl yelps in surprise at being caught reading instead of cleaning. Her terrifying presence prompts Guldo to pull his son aside, whispering a stern warning to never provoke the woman. She once dealt with a violent A-rank adventurer who, despite 3 warnings, failed his mission and caused chaos within the guild, yet still demanded payment. He grew aggressive, physically restraining the young guildmaster while shouting for a reward he hadn't earned, causing her to choke under his grip. He scoffed when ordered to let go, completely dismissing the threat from the seemingly ordinary receptionist standing before him. He didn't see the strike coming as her patience finally evaporated into a whirlwind of sudden, overwhelming violence. He was slammed into the ground with bone-shattering force, the impact echoing through the hall as she took control. He was utterly dominated as she unleashed a relentless barrage of strikes, ignoring his futile attempts to resist while Laruku watched in horror. He retired in disgrace shortly after, mentally broken by the encounter that earned her a 6-month suspension and left the guild in a state of permanent dread. His defeat remains a grim legend. Meanwhile, she offers a polite apology for her aura while Laruku vows never to anger her. The diminutive guildmaster leads the young boy away, ignoring his desperate pleas for help from his father as Ryo distracts everyone with the sight of a stray butterfly. Despite his apologies and attempts to negotiate, she remains unmoved, insisting that their discussion is non-negotiable. Sometime later, he finds himself tasked with the mundane chore of cleaning the guild's floors, a stark contrast to the intensity of his recent trials. His work is interrupted when a delivery person arrives, presenting a large, wrapped package specifically addressed to him. He carefully pries open the lid, revealing a collection of neatly packed items nestled inside. Upon inspecting the contents, he discovers his new school uniform and textbooks, accompanied by a letter from Wallace. A wave of realization washes over him as he remembers he had been wearing the librarian's clothes throughout his examination, and the sight of the official academy gear brings a shy, satisfied smile to his face. His moment of quiet reflection is broken by a firm knock at the door, followed by the entrance of the boisterous Doldas. The veteran adventurer explains that he has come specifically to see the boy, having heard the news of his success. He proudly presents a pair of beautifully wrapped gifts, explaining that one is from himself and the other is a collective offering from Imelda and the staff at the Small Baron. The large man lets out a hearty laugh as he shares the news that the boy not only passed but achieved the highest marks, earning him the honor of delivering a speech at the upcoming entrance ceremony. Overwhelmed by the kindness and the news, the young student offers his sincere thanks, his eyes bright with joy. He begins to unwrap the offerings, finding a set of high-quality stationery from the inn and a set of finely crafted children's robes provided by Doldas and his companions. As he dons the new garment, the veteran explains that they chose the robe to support his transition into academy life and his future as an adventurer. Beaming with pride and gratitude, the boy promises to treasure the gift as he prepares for the next chapter of his journey. As night falls over the quiet rooftops, the young boy kneels on the floor of his room, carefully organizing his belongings into a sturdy suitcase. His eyes sparkle with anticipation as he realizes the moment he has been preparing for is finally here. The long-awaited journey to the academy is about to begin, and his heart races with a mixture of nerves and pure, unadulterated excitement for the new life that awaits him. He stood alone, eyes fixed on the parchment in his hands, his voice a low, rhythmic murmur as he rehearsed his lines. The weight of the upcoming ceremony pressed upon him until a familiar presence appeared at the door. He was interrupted when she noticed the dark circles beneath his eyes, questioning his well-being. He admitted to an all-nighter spent perfecting his address, his voice strained with exhaustion. Just then, a vibrant energy burst into the room as another student approached. This newcomer reached out with a beaming smile, introducing herself as Sarah. She seemed eager to make his acquaintance, her enthusiasm a sharp contrast to his weary state. Because of her sudden arrival, the atmosphere lightened. Ryo teased that Sarah hadn't stopped talking about him, making this meeting feel long overdue. With the ceremony about to begin, the trio made their way toward the grand hall. Moments later, he stood before the assembled students, his voice steady as he delivered his speech. The hall echoed with the rhythmic sound of applause as he concluded his remarks, the audience clearly impressed by the young speaker. After the final word, he offered a deep, respectful bow. A heavy sigh of relief escaped him as the immense pressure of the moment finally dissipated. As he walked through the halls, several peers approached to offer their congratulations. They praised his composure and the quality of his words, while he humbly accepted their kind remarks. While walking, he listened as Ryo proposed an excursion beyond the city walls once they settled into academy life. He noted that his father, Goldo, had already granted permission for such a venture, much to their delight. In response, they expressed a mix of excitement and caution. While the prospect of adventure was tempting, they reminded him of the monsters that roamed the wilds, questioning if the journey might be too perilous for them. He listens as Sarah enthusiastically displays her prowess, boasting of her level 4 proficiency in both light and water magic, while demonstrating her abilities with floating orbs and a sudden splash of water. Because of his visible surprise, she clarifies that her exceptional strength stems from the divine protection of the gods of light and water, a blessing shared by her companion. This revelation leaves him momentarily stunned, his mind racing to process the existence of such powerful peers. As the classroom buzzes with the chatter of other students, he realizes that he is not the only one who has received special blessings from higher powers. Suddenly, the door swings open and the instructors, Carl and Morris, stride into the room to introduce themselves as the homeroom and assistant homeroom teachers for the practical magic and magic studies courses. Following their lead, the students begin their own introductions, starting with Kagura, a demi-human from a distant land, and Leon, a nervous but friendly beast-man youth. Next, a boy named Dolan identifies himself as a dragonaut who favors the sword over magic, followed by Melria, a cheerful girl skilled in holy element magic. The introductions continue with Roke Dudley, the son of a prominent company chairman, leading him to marvel at the incredible diversity of his new classmates. Finally, he stands to give his own name, Laruku Valtoris, just before Master Carl announces that the group will now embark on a tour of the Academy's extensive facilities. As they file out of the room under the watchful eyes of their teachers, a prickling sensation washes over him, leaving him with a distinct feeling that someone is staring intently at his back. He looks up with a polite, slightly curious expression, wondering if the instructor has something on his mind. Suddenly, he grabs the large man's arm and pulls him into a conspiratorial huddle, whispering a quiet inquiry about his father's current state. Seeing the man's hesitation, the boy quickly backtracks, waving his hands to dismiss the question and spare him any awkwardness. As the boy falls silent, the instructor remains quiet, his mind drifting back to the sight of a lone warrior standing defiantly against a dragon, a display of power that left him feeling unworthy. While the man is lost in thought, the young student reassures him that his father isn't one to harbor ill will and has even found common ground with the others. He watches as the man sinks further into his own thoughts, deciding it best to let the matter rest for now. A heavy hand suddenly descends, patting the boy's head with a force that nearly knocks him off balance, a silent gesture of acknowledgement. By the third day of classes, the atmosphere in the academy has shifted toward practical application as the teacher announces an icebreaker activity. As the teacher finishes his announcement, a nearby classmate leans in, eager to know what kind of magic the young Valtoris heir intends to demonstrate to the group. He listens intently as Laruku explains the simplicity of combination spells, eventually witnessing a swirling vortex of flame and light that leaves him in awe of such effortless control. He begins by merging fire and water into a swirling vortex before using wind magic to levitate the resulting sphere. The air roars with the intensity of the combined elements as his classmate watches in awe. As the shimmering orb begins to drip, he calmly invites the other boy to reach out and touch the magical construct. The boy finds the sphere surprisingly warm to the touch, prompting a humble explanation that while many struggle with such techniques, mastery is possible for anyone dedicated to their studies. Their demonstration draws the admiration of the entire class, sparking a conversation about the rarity of combination spells and the utility of storage skills. His classmate explains the limitations of his own interdimensional storage box, noting that it serves primarily as a convenient bag for smaller items he can physically touch. Turning the focus back to him, the girl with the butterfly bow suggests that his storage ability must be far superior if it allows for remote collection and greater capacity. He clarifies that his useful box operates differently, organizing items by their specific type rather than their total quantity. Once the lessons conclude, the dark-haired boy inquires about his plans, leading him to reveal his intention to search for a specific item in the merchant district. Hearing this, the energetic girl offers to guide him, explaining that her home lies in that direction and she would be happy to assist in his search. Together, they make their way through the bustling streets, where the local townspeople offer friendly greetings, recognizing him as the son of the legendary Goldo. He explains the concept of rice to Sarah, describing it as a versatile cooking ingredient. She listens with wide-eyed curiosity, her interest piqued by the unfamiliar term as they make their way through the merchant district. Upon entering a nearby establishment, they are greeted by an elderly clerk who immediately recognizes their companion, Roke. The shop is quiet and orderly, its shelves lined with various bottles and containers that suggest a high-end inventory. The young noble introduces the man as Mr. Taldora, a veteran employee of his family's business. Taldora bows respectfully, acknowledging their shared class and Laruku's lineage as the son of the renowned Goldo, noting that everyone in the company knows of him. When asked about their specific needs, the boy mentions the elusive ingredient once more. Taldora chuckles warmly, assuring them that his shop specializes in rare items that are difficult to find anywhere else, making it the perfect place for such a request. To his surprise, the clerk is already familiar with the grain, much to the amazement of the others. While Sarah marvels at Taldora's knowledge, the boy quietly reflects on his own past life, recalling the taste of the food he once enjoyed before his reincarnation. The shopkeeper admits that he maintains a significant stock of the item, though it rarely sells. He explains that because no one ever buys it, he was actually at a loss as to how to handle the surplus inventory. This revelation leaves Sarah stunned, her face contorted in disbelief that such a rare find was so close at hand. She can hardly contain her shock at the prospect of the shop actually having it in stock. With a heavy thump, Taldora places a large sack on the counter. The boy leans in to inspect the contents, noting that the small, hard grains resemble seeds more than the prepared food he remembers from his previous existence. Seeing the genuine article brings a radiant smile to the girl's face. Her eyes sparkle with joy and relief, the successful search filling her with a sense of pure triumph. The elderly man explains his failed attempt to popularize the grain, citing its long shelf life and excellent flavor as reasons for his initial optimism. When he reveals he has 50 kilograms in stock, Sarah immediately insists on purchasing the entire supply, much to the surprise of the shopkeeper. She slammed her hands down, her voice ringing out with a bold declaration to purchase the entire stock. The shopkeeper, Taldora, gasped in disbelief, questioning if she truly meant to take every last grain. Laruku, ever practical, inquired if there was a limit to their purchase and if the shop could continue to stock the rare ingredient in the future. Taldora, though surprised, readily agreed to the request. Having secured the bounty, the young boy returned to his quarters, his heart light as he hummed a cheerful tune about his favorite food. In the kitchen, a large pot sat atop the stove, the water within beginning to bubble and boil with a steady rhythm. With the rice prepared and other ingredients at the ready, he set to work with a focused intensity. Steam rose in thick clouds as he expertly tossed the grains in a hot pan, the sizzling sound filling the room. He knew exactly what he wanted to create, the fabled dish of fried rice. Moments later, he presented the finished creation to his father. Goldo, lured by the savory aroma that wafted through the air, looked upon the golden mound of rice with genuine curiosity, noting that something smelled remarkably good. The seasoned warrior took a cautious bite, chewing slowly as he contemplated the unfamiliar flavors. Beside him, Laruku waited with bated breath, his heart hammering against his ribs in a frantic rhythm. Goldo admitted that despite his travels, he had never heard of such a dish. His initial skepticism vanished instantly as the flavors exploded on his palate. With a look of pure delight, he began to eat with gusto, praising the boy's culinary genius and eagerly asking for a second helping. Laruka beamed, relieved and proud that his efforts were so well received. After the meal, the boy retreated to his room, a sense of deep satisfaction washing over him. As he wiped the remnants of the day's work from his face, he whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, feeling a heavy weariness finally begin to settle into his bones. However, as he prepared for sleep, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over him. The world seemed to tilt and blur, and a cold sense of foreboding gripped his heart, replacing his earlier elation with a sharp, inexplicable fear. His strength failed him entirely, and with a dull thud, he collapsed onto the wooden floor, his consciousness slipping away into the darkness.